Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting for Bedford Township for April 16, 2019. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Logan, if you'd like to come on up and open us up in prayer.
Good evening, Logan Tisdale. Bible historians list 4 great events in the history of man that are the most important events in our history. The first, of course, being the creation of man. Notice I didn't say evolution of man. In timeless eternity, God said, let us make man in our own image and likeness. And he took man and formed him out of the dust of the ground and breathed in him the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Second great event, the call of Abraham. And the reason why that's so important is because through the lineage of Abraham, the third great event would take place. And that's the birth of God's only begotten Son, the Lord Jesus Christ. That's the third event. And that's the event we're going to be talking about here tonight before I pray. We know that as Easter Sunday. We know that the third event incorporated not only the incarnation of Christ, but his whole life, his death, burial, resurrection, and his ascension into heaven. The fourth great event is predicated on that last thing, which is when he sent his Holy Spirit to indwell us. And that was the guarantee, the deposit that you and I someday, if we are in Christ, would be resurrected from the dead. Because Christ is coming back, and that's the fourth great event in the history of mankind. When that takes place, I don't know. But I'm anticipating it because I believe it's going to happen. We celebrate Easter this coming week and stuff, and we celebrate Good Friday, and we celebrate the death of Jesus Christ on the cross. And I think sometimes it becomes like Christmas. It becomes so diluted in some of the things with Easter eggs and Easter bunnies and stuff that we don't really grasp the significance of that. When man fell, he did one thing. He separated his relationship with God. There was a separation there that could not be restored unless there was a sacrifice for the sin that he committed. On the cross, Jesus took upon himself every single thing that took place in the garden. He took upon himself the nakedness that they felt when they sinned against God. And I believe that Christ was crucified naked on the cross, not with some nice little loincloth that we say, because I know that the Romans were terrible people at the time. He took upon himself the rejection and the separation from God. He said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And that's the first time in his entire life he ever felt separated. He took upon himself sickness. He took upon himself the terrible feelings that we have when we sin. He took that all upon himself. And he took upon himself the curse that came upon the earth. When he took those thorns upon his head, that was the curse to the ground when Adam and Eve sinned. So everything that was taken away from us through sin was restored in Christ. Everything. And only in him do we have that chance of restoration. And that's what Easter is about. It's about God reconciling man back to himself. That God sent his only begotten Son, who became the priest. And priest needs nothing more than a bridge builder. And what Christ did was he bridged the gap between a holy God and sinful man by becoming that sacrifice once and for all for us. I have greater access into the presence of God than the first high priest did, and that was Aaron. He had to come once a year and always with blood. He always came in fear and trepidation. That you would tie a rope around his leg so that if he messed up and stuff and died in the Holy of Holies, they could pull him out because they were afraid to go in the presence of God. But because of Christ and his sacrifice, I have direct access into the Holy of Holies. That curtain, which was rent from top to bottom, which is his broken body, gives me access into his presence. I can do it any time. I can do it in boldness. He revealed that God is our Father. They didn't even know that before Christ came. And I can call him Abba, Father. I can say, Daddy, I need you. And he accepts me because I'm in Christ. He doesn't see me, he sees Christ. Paul said it this way, I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live. The life I live in the flesh I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. That's what it's all about. That's what Easter is all about. It's not about eggs and stuff like that. It's about knowing that in Christ I have access to the Father, and that I have the hope of eternal salvation. That's what God wanted. He wanted the people to live with him in eternity. And that's what we have in Christ. This is my prayer tonight. I hope you bow your heads with me. I pray, Lord, that we don't take for granted the gift that was given us by the death of your Son, the Lord Jesus Christ. I pray we don't just gloss it over as some story in the Bible and make it just a part of church tradition. I pray you cut us to the heart like you did to the multitudes on the day of Pentecost when Peter preached his great sermon. I pray, dear God, that we get a new revelation of the magnitude of your love for us, that you did not even spare your beloved Son in order to save us. Wake up your people in this community. Turn our hearts back to our first love again. Rebuke our lukewarmness and convict our hearts of our apathy towards people's sufferings. Cause rivers of living water to flow out of us to bring hope and life to the lost. Let our cry be like Paul the Apostle. I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection. Bring judgment first in your house, I pray. Convict us of our shortcomings. Encourage us to be more like your Son. Humble us, O God. Turn us from our wicked ways. Help us to seek your face. Forgive our sins and heal our lands. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 2 is approval of the agenda. I'd like to add the Buckeye Telesystem Communications Evaluation and Proposal to item 8E. You have that in front of you. And then I'd like to remove item 7A. And the reason I'd like to remove 7A is it does not have the option 3 that I believe this board directed legal to put on, which is to give the businesses the option to put a contact list in there without going before the appeals board. So I feel like we should pull that off and send that back to legal to have the third option.
I'll second that.
Ms. Sanderberg?
Is that a motion?
Yeah, no.
Well, I have a question. What is the, is there a reason why this is urgent? Because this was just laid before me tonight, and it says communications evaluation and proposal. There is absolutely no way that I am going to be able to digest a 10 to 15 page document that is a evaluation and proposal. Is there a reason that it's urgent?
Do you want to explain or you want me to?
I'll jump
Miss
in.
something, jump in. So, as the board has directed us, and as we've done for the last 2 years, we've gone through almost every contract that we can think of. And this is one of those that automatically renewed until 2016, Trudy?
Correct.
And then it didn't. So there was no contract. So Telesystems calls me last week and they say, hey, we want to have a meeting with you. We got some great deals. All right, come on in. So I invite Trudy in because, you know, I thought it was something to do with communication, so I wanted Trudy to be there, so it wasn't. It was to do with our outdated contract, which come at great timing because our phones are outdated. You can't get replacement parts for them, and when they break down, she has to buy them. And mine's broken at the moment. So they came in, and back in 2011, we bought all new phones. I think it was like $15,000. And we pay roughly $19.50 per phone per month. And we have 44 phones. But let me just
Would you
finish because it's
yeah.
important. So that basically, we've been paying $19.50 to $23.50 since 2011. And I told them, I said, well, we're going to get all new brand new phones. And if you can get it for $17.50 per phone line instead of the $19.50, which saves us $6,000 a month, I mean, we negotiated for a while in there, then we would, you know, bring it to the board and see what to say, because we did put it out for bid in 2011, and we did go with them, and we did buy all these phones, so it's a really good deal.
Okay, what's the urgency? Is the deadline before the next meeting?
Yes.
What's the urgency?
The urgency is they will only honor this till this meeting.
Oh, well, too bad.
So if
you're
you wanna
dealing
put it
with
out for
a
bid,
company
we're gonna-
like that, then I say, we don't need them.
Well,
No,
that's because he negotiated the price $2 a phone lower, and they didn't want to do that. And the phones are free that we would be getting as the upgrade, and right now our phones are about $400 a piece if they break. and they can't replace them. I'd have to find a refurbished one, and there's no guarantee they'll keep coming up. We did have a hard time getting them to reboot the last time that we changed the switches out.
We can do what we want to do. I mean, we
I-
can,
You
it's
can go
fine.
ahead, I can vote no, but I'm telling you,
If
a
we need more
shyster is the
time,
kind
I
of
can.
person that pushes
No,
you.
we can
He
go back.
called
He's not
you.
pushing me. We can
He
go back to
called
the
you.
table.
It's the same company, same contract.
Well, if he didn't call me, we'd be paying $19.50 continuing on and buying our phone, so I'm glad he did. But I can call him and talk to him and push it to the next meeting.
No,
I just,
move
that was
on.
the deal.
I can vote no, it's fine.
Does anybody have any other questions? We have a motion, any more discussion? About the agenda?
I would just say too, like Nancy, that this is the same, that it is the same company, like, as currently being used. So it's like, it's not like switching companies, it's just upgrading your contract.
And it has automatically renewed, but it didn't in 2000. Why didn't it automatically renew in 2016, you remember?
He didn't say, he couldn't say,
No.
he didn't know.
Move on.
Okay. Could you call the roll?
Mr. Peroni?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
What are we voting on, the amendment to the agenda?
The
We added
agenda,
Buckeye Telesystem and removed 7A.
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
No,
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clement?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes no.
Okay, motion passed 5-2. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. The agenda committee recommends A, approve and place on file the minutes of the April 2nd, 2019 regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board. B, accept and place on file the general saving, pooled funds, and CD reports from the treasurer. C, approve and place on file the revenue expense report and balance sheet from the period ending March 31st, 2019. I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion supported by Mr. Montry. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clement?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
aye,
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 4, presentation. A swearing-in ceremony for Bedford Township firefighters. And after we do swear you in, you are free to leave. Don't feel like you have to stay.
Thank you, Mr. Super.
Good evening. I'd like to ask firefighter EMT Jeremy DeArmond, firefighter EMT Jeffrey Hardin, and firefighter EMT Nicholas Hoskins to come up to the front for the swearing in.
If you'd all raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States, the state of Michigan, and Bedford Township? Do you affirm that you will follow the rules and regulations of the Bedford Fire Department and obey the commands of the officer in charge of emergency calls and drills? That you will honestly and impartially perform all the duties of a firefighter and respect and protect the honor and dignities of the Bedford Township Fire Department to the best of your abilities, so help you God. Congratulations.
Tonight, to pin the badges, we've got family members they've asked to come up. So first, for firefighter DeArmond, he's assigned to Station 3, and his son Ben will be pinning his badge today.
You need a hammer to pound that in with, or what?
Thank you, Ben. Firefighter Hardin is also assigned to Station 3, and his wife Heather will be pinning him tonight. And firefighter Hoskins is assigned to Station 1. His fiancee Olivia will be pinning him tonight.
Get a picture up there? Congratulations. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you for your dedication, sir. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your commitment.
Congratulations.
Oh, he's coming this way. Congratulations.
Okay, anybody wants a picture, come on up. Okay, congratulations, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Okay, item 4B, recommendations from the Compensation Committee. Come on up.
Hi, Bill Zeiler, Brandywine Street, Temperance. I am the chairman of the Bedford Township Compensation Committee. We are charged with setting the salaries of the elected officials of Bedford Township. I, along with our secretary, Mary Ann McBee, members John Sikowski, Phil Konesecker, and Jan Howard, have come up with the following recommendation, which the board may vote to accept, reject, or do nothing, after which it will automatically go into effect July 1st, 2019. We also are making these recommendations as 3 separate motions in the event that the board would like to reject only part of these recommendations. All motions were passed unanimously by the committee. We examined the salaries for elected officials throughout Monroe County and similar-sized townships around the state. After a great deal of research and discussion, we make the following recommendations. We felt that a 2.8% increase in 2019 for the supervisor, the treasurer, and the clerk that would match the federal government's latest cost of living increase, and 2% for the 2020 year, since we do not know what the cost of living increase will be for that year, and 2% is what the township normally gives to unelected officials. We recommend a smaller increase of $100 for 2019 and $100 for 2020 for the trustees, since their compensation is in line with many of the other townships in the area and those of similar size throughout the state. It was agreed to give all of the park board members an increase of $120 in 2019 and $120 in 2020. Taking into account the financial information that David Manning provided regarding the proposed 2019 budget, funds are available for any proposed increases. So, if you'd like, I can detail what that percentage works out to for this elected officials, if you like, or.
Anybody have any questions, or Mr. Clements?
I just want to say thank you for bringing us 3 separate motions. It gives us the ability to vote, I think, a little bit more consistent with what the board would like to do
Sure.
versus having to do one. So I just appreciate you taking that into consideration.
Yeah, and we took into consideration all the thoughts of, of the board members that came and talked to us, and we appreciate that too, so. But, any other?
Okay, I look for a motion or discussion, whatever, Ms. Tinderberg?
I'm not sure, has the law changed that we need to move?
We don't have to move, we can just
I was
do
at the
anything.
understanding that the Compensation Commission met, put forth a resolution, and you either accept, or you denied it, or you did nothing. And I have no reason to deny it. I too thank you. I think you've done a wonderful job. You do this, no compensation, and you meet and you take time out of your life and schedules, and I think that it looks fair and fine to me, unless someone else has any other, I would just assume not vote on it, I would just assume accept what they have presented. That's
No
just my
vote.
opinion.
No vote is
Thank you.
required. You can accept the report and place it on file, if you choose to do it that way.
Is the attorney wages on here? Oh. It's easy.
We're
Thank you
not
for being here,
elected.
we appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate all your work.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yes, thank
Supervisor.
you.
Mr. Steiner has a
Mr. Steiner?
Well, in the past, we have always voted on it ever since I've been on the board. And it's been a pass, a fail, or if you did nothing, then of course it goes into effect as it was written. So I'm of the opinion there's some things in here that I would have voted no on. And I would like to send it to a vote instead of just letting it slide.
Okay, would you like to make a motion,
Mr. Clements has a comment.
Mr. Clemens?
Yeah, I was going to say, I asked the compensation committee, I may have been one of many that specifically asked that we receive 3 motions. I don't know where Mr. Steiner's headed with it, but I have no problem with any of the numbers as presented and think it's appropriate, except I do not think that as a trustee that I necessarily need an increase this year or next based on the level and the type of work that we do. So if I were going to make a motion, I would recommend that this board accept the recommendation of the compensation committee to approve the first and third motion with a rejection of the wage increase to the trustees and absolutely no disrespect to the compensation committee. Sorry, Nancy.
I mean, it's really not a raise, it's just a stipend, and, I mean, $100, I don't care, I don't need a raise either, but the point is, they were trying to be gracious to everyone, and I don't know, okay, whatever, I have my vote, however I want to vote.
We have a motion, we have support.
I'll second.
Okay, motion support of Mr. Steiner, discussion.
Mr. Peroni? And again, did Bill, oh, there he is, Bill, Mr. Zeiler. And again, no disrespect, you guys do a lot of hard work. I sat on the compensation committee many years ago. I will reiterate one thing, and I know, Bill, you and I have had some lengthy discussions over the years since you've been on the committee. And nothing against you, but I think some of it has fallen on deaf ears over the years, that due to some of the statutory responsibilities of the clerk, treasurer, and supervisor, I think the 3 salaries should be equaled. And I've said that I don't know how many times over how many compensation committees. And that's probably why I didn't really comment again this year, because I've said my piece over the number of years. I think the clerk and treasurer should be equal to the supervisor. But with that said, other than that, I mean, you guys do a lot of work and research on that, and appreciate your input and your feedback.
Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clements?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Could you repeat the motion, just that we're voting on it, or are we voting on?
The motion is to accept the first motion and their third motion, and to reject the second motion, which would be the $100 each year for the trustees.
Oh, that's all in one motion? Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye. And the motion, you passed, you said aye, right, Ms. Tinberry? That's 7-0?
I
Yeah.
said aye, but
Okay.
high, I'll do high, too.
All right. 7-0. Okay, item
I'm not
5 is
high, though. I'm not high.
public comment. Comments limited to 2 minutes for board agenda items only. Come on up.
Mike Sprott, my wife and I own Real Estate Solutions, 8927 Lewis Avenue. We also reside in the township at 8872 Tanglewood. My comment today is on the fire code. This is the Michigan Building Code. It's 682 pages long, or no, excuse me, it's 862 pages long of code. The township has chosen to enforce some of these codes, but not all of them. I have 3 issues, major issues, with the township requiring lockboxes on businesses. Number 1, in my opinion, is a violation of the 4th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. The government is not allowed to enter a private building without probable cause and a warrant signed by a judge. Number two, these are keys I purchased on the internet. They will open every bank-owned home in the country, and anyone in this room can purchase these keys on the internet with no restrictions. Number three, the fire code that you're trying to enforce does not protect the safety of any of the business owners or any of the people within this township. It's strictly there to reduce the liability for the fire department for breaking down a door for unjust cause. If they were really interested in protecting the residents of this township, they would enforce the fire code, which requires, and this is the United States Fire Code, the Michigan Fire Code, and the International Fire Code, that requires egress windows from basements. And I'll read just an excerpt from that code.
Hey.
If a basement contains
Mike,
room.
You can continue at your 5-minute time.
Okay, thank you.
Any more comments from the public?
Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance. A couple things. I was prepared for the roundabout, so if somebody could tell me who requested to pull it and why, I would love to know that. And then my main comment here is, as a resident of the road closure issue in downtown Temperance, I take great offense that this here was kind of slid in, and those of us that actually have to live there have been denied our right to a voice. We've been stymied, and I believe it's been intentional. There should be a public hearing before you shut down the streets in the town where someone has to live, work, and play. This is what happens when you allow the business districts to become bullies and dictate to a particular neighborhood. I'm going to be there. Any of the businesses can be down there and disappear. I'm still going to be there. But if the residents pack up and leave, there's no reason to have businesses there. So I take great offense, and I know a lot of my neighbors the same. We needed to be consulted first, and I'll speak more at the 5-minute time on this.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
Good evening again, Logan Tisdale. On a positive note, I just want to thank, it never ceases to amaze me that we can find people to volunteer to be firemen. I worked with a lot of fire departments when I was a police officer, and their service to the community is invaluable. So to see 3 new people come up here and to volunteer and to know what goes, that takes to do that is really kind of amazing to me. That's, to me, is the epitome of service. I want to thank them for doing that. I also want to say, and the same thing with that, is that the people that go along our roads that pack our red bags and stuff, I saw them out there the other day. I don't think we give them much credit for doing that. And I tell you, every time I see them, I just think to myself, that's a service that we maybe take for granted that we should really recognize here as a board. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments? Okay, seeing none, moving on to 6A, staff reports, request for approval to proceed with the design work and updated feasibility study for the rebuild at Fire Station 1. Chief, come on up.
In the board packets tonight is the pricing that we received back from various architecture firms. We're really addressing station issues right now in we're taking 2 different avenues. So number 1, Station 1, we know that the mold remediation work is done, and essentially the building is gutted and unusable right now. In speaking with the building inspector, not only do we have to get some design work done before we can send out for bid the rebuild of that station, we're also going to need to bring it up to a level of ADA compliance when we're doing the rebuild work. We also need to address a couple of other issues up there. We've got the problem with the brick in the front that continues to separate and needs to be addressed. So part of this was sending out was to address that design work so that we could move forward with some pricing for the rebuild at Station 1. The other side of it was to update the feasibility study that was done in 2005. So as we discussed and as we addressed in the annual report, when we presented the station report to the board, the recommendation was for a next step before a final determination could be made on some long-term direction. The recommendation is to update that feasibility study so that we can be working with 2019 numbers as far as costs for remodeling, rebuilding, or different avenues for the stations. Instead of the 2005 numbers, we know that the buildings haven't improved in the condition since 2005, nor have construction costs been reduced. So we don't feel like we can make a good final recommendation or bring options to the board for consideration as far as the stations until we know what kind of numbers we're going to be working for. So in working with the building inspector, we identified 4 local architecture firms. 3 of the 4 submitted pricing back to us, and that's what was presented to you tonight.
Okay, discussion or questions from board members? Ms. Tenenberry?
Thank you. Thank you for this. I understand that all this needs to be done, but when I spoke with you before, you said that the Kohler architect, as I added up, it was $2,750. This is what that paragraph says. I thank you for the opportunity to quote your project, and I trust that the above is as requested. We can begin once we receive a retainer check in the amount of $1,500 and this letter with your signature of approval. It doesn't say it reduces. It says we can begin once you send us a $1,500 retainer check. So did they say at some other time that it was?
On page,
There's a discount in there.
yeah, on the following, so 2 pages back from that, I'm sorry, I may have pointed out the wrong section of that in speaking earlier, but 2 pages back from that, we can offer a deduct on the feasibility study of $1,500 due to overlapping work.
Oh,
So my apologies, I pointed out the,
They reduced it.
No, wait, that's the wrong one, too, yeah.
if you-
It's in here, I saw it too,
page
Chief.
3 of 3.
Okay.
Well, their numbering doesn't make sense on their pages either. They've
No.
got 2 of 2 and 1 of 3, and
Right, so yes, if you go to the page that's identified as page 3 of 3. So my apologies, ma'am, I pointed out the wrong section
Okay.
earlier, but it is in fact there.
Well, I apologize. I'm having trouble with my vision, and so I just read that and didn't look at the rest of it, so. But also, their part 1 is Fire Station 2. Aren't we interested in Fire Station 1 first?
Well, we feel that we should move forward with both concurrently, so we certainly need to get the design work done at Station 1, but at the same time, we need to update the feasibility study so that we can get solid numbers across the board so we know what we're working with. So whether they identify it as 1 or 2, we simply calculated based
Okay.
on the totals for the
Okay.
work.
Okay, thank you.
it looks very
I
similar to the
found
other
it.
one.
He found it for me, thank you. Okay, I just want to say that I preferred the presentation by David Arthur Consultants far above the other 2. They were much more detailed. I understand that they're more expensive for all 3, but I was hoping to see some references from this James Jacob architect. And I think his $13,300 one isn't firm because he continually says plus reimbursable expenses. And I just have done enough work with architects and engineers to know that it always seems to climb. So I would like to see some kind of contract that says up to $13,300 if this is the one you're recommending, and then anything over that would have to come back to the board because reimbursable expenses can climb pretty quickly. Also, Kohler talks about demolition of the buildings, and I understand people, I'm always referring to my age, but because I'm old, I don't like to see old buildings demolished. So if it's at all feasible to rehabilitate, I would rather see that. And the fact that they would, before they demo any of those buildings, they'd have to come back to the board. It's
Yes.
not going to be part of a thing that's going to be required.
I think that what he's referring to, making the assumption, the 2005 study did a cost comparison of demolishing the existing buildings and rebuilding on the site versus rehabbing, and that's really what we need to know. If it was going to be 3 or 4 times more to rehab a building than to demolish it and put a new building up, then that should be something that the board weighs. So I don't think that there's any direction that we're looking for other than the cost and what the cost comparison would be for a new building versus to rehab the building, the existing stations. So I don't think we can fairly make any type of, at least I can't fairly make any type, or give the board any type of input unless we know what the numbers are, or until we know what numbers are.
For what they're trying to do, Nancy, I mean, it wouldn't even be close. I mean, they're talking mainly office buildings, offices inside the fire department, right?
It's Station 1, the immediate work.
Station 1.
Our initial feeling is that it will be significantly less to rehab Station 1 than it would be to build a new station, just based on some very, very cursory discussions with the architects. That may not be the case at Station 2, but again, it's far too early to tell.
Okay, I'm just concerned about no other contract other than this statement on these people that we would sign and kind of lose control of the whole process. I have to say that I worked at the road commission when that old building was remodeled, and that's exactly what they want, same company wanted to do, is demolish it. And it was easily remodeled and updated without being demolished, so, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any board members have any comments or questions?
I was just gonna say, if you wanted to speak on like the differences between, like, you had just said, like, you've had conversations with each of them and feel pretty confident that Jacobs is gonna do the same job for this information as any of the others. And I just wanted you to speak on that a little bit. maybe.
Yeah, I felt very comfortable with all three and with the communication from all three of them, as well as I think that the input that I got from the building inspector, again, I don't want to speak for him, was that we should feel comfortable with any of the three as far as providing the work that we're expecting and requesting. So I did feel comfortable with all three, absolutely.
And a lot of the other stuff like that is, most of that's coming from the original feasibility study, right? Because they're updating that, so that's why they're figuring all of, like the stuff that Nancy's talking about, of like demolition and stuff. They're just taking the original feasibility and updating all of that, correct?
Yeah, yes, very much so. So we want to look at what we have, or what we were given in 2005, address any, certainly there have been code changes, there have been many things that need to be updated or addressed, as well as the pricing itself.
Okay.
So,
Okay. I look for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Clements?
I make a motion that we accept the recommendation from Chief Massengill to contract with James F. Jacob Architects to do the work, the rebuild of Station 1 and the balance or updated feasibility work, with the provision that any work to exceed $13,300 that we would receive notice and be able to address those additional overruns or potential costs that would exceed the 13,300.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is supported. Discussion?
For
Mr. Francis?
clarification, this isn't to construct it, this is to
Right.
make the design.
Design,
So
absolutely.
Put designs in the
So you
motion.
can get quotes.
Right.
I think you did say construct though, didn't you?
If I did, I apologize. I'm a bit under the weather, so the design work, excuse me.
Okay, because I'm not happy with this proposal. I don't see anything where we sign or they sign. Because it says Jacob Architects' fee for Phase 3 services is estimated to be within the range of 6 to 8% of the construction costs. We don't see any construction costs. We're agreeing to 6 to 8% of the construction costs. We don't know what that is.
We're not in phase 3 yet.
We're not even to phase 2
This
yet,
is-
so we
this
would have
is
to
for-
approve construction costs before we would approve or be agreeable to that.
This is for all three.
But his motion is to approve Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 3, you won't have a construction cost until after Phase 1 and Phase 2 are done, then that would be brought to the board whether we want to follow through with construction or what our
Okay.
plans are.
I'm
So,
just not happy without having a signature.
and the indication that I received from Mr. Jacobs was, if the design work is done and we send it out for bid and we find an acceptable price and agree to go ahead with the project, that they would oversee that Phase 3. My understanding is that it would be between a 6 or an 8% cost for them to oversee that project if we opted for them to provide the oversight in the work, if we get to that point.
Okay,
I'll
could you
try
call the
to be a
roll,
team
please?
player here.
And that means we also don't have to select them to manage it.
Correct.
We could go with somebody else.
Yes, sir.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Thank you, Chief. Item 8A, request for approval of vouchers for payment.
I'd like to make a motion that the following vouchers be approved for payment. General Fund, $235,184.68. Fire District Fund, $18,508.35. Police Fund, $108,459.88. Park Operating Fund, $484.40. Fire Equipment, $305,483.95. Transit System Fund, $15,857. Library Operating Fund, $6,887.84. Water Revenue Fund, $3,057.11. Downtown Development Authority, $1,888.02. Sewer O&M Fund, $26,869.86. Trust and Agency Fund, $606.56, for a grand total of $723,287.65.
Support.
Motion is supported by Mr. Francis. Discussion?
Just real quick, just something we had discussed in budget meetings of the fuel charges. Like that those, I don't know if that was like run to the bank stuff, and I don't know where we left that or whatever, if that was gonna be something we were gonna change or weren't gonna change.
We never really discussed it in further depth. I mean, Mr.
That's what, it was just something that I had seen that I was just like, I know that, I don't think it was ever anything written in stone, but I just wanted to bring it up when I was looking through this. And I don't know if that's something we bring back for discussion at another point, or that's my only like comment, really.
It's in Mr. Francis's budget, so I mean, if he wants to let people have mileage to go to the bank, I guess it's up to him.
Okay.
Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 8B, discussion of 2 road closures for the Temperance Street Trust. Kristen, come on up, and the Chief, come on up, please. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
So you just want to kind of go through what's happening and a little bit about the day, and then Chief, you could tell us how you've worked with Chief and.
Okay. Yep, I am part owner of Barron Insurance in Temperance, Michigan, 9041 Lewis Avenue, and director of Bedford Festivals Committee. And we are looking to close down the street, a section of Lewis Avenue, for Temperance Street Fest, which will be August 24th. It's on a Saturday. The hours are going to be from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., and we're looking to close the road from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. I don't want to speak for Chief Massengill, but we did get approval from the fire department. I've also already talked to the Monroe County Sheriff's Department, and they're on board as well. They actually even said that they'll have an officer there at the event. He's guaranteed there unless there's an emergency and he has to step away, but they're going to have at least one person there. I've also talked to multiple business owners. I haven't gotten any pushback. They're all in agreements of closing down the street and participating in the event. I've also talked to the Monroe County Road Commission. They are going to lend us signs, road closure signs, as long as they're available. So I've been in contact with them, and they're on board for it as well. And I just wanted to say too, we're not trying to hinder anybody's business. This is actually hoping to bring some light to business in Temperance, and also provide a family-friendly, fun event for the community to go to. As a mother of 2 young children, I look to this area of things to do and take my kids and have a fun family event, so that's what we're trying to put on for this community. So any questions?
I just want to say I appreciate your due diligence. I think you've taken your time. You've talked to the businesses, you've talked to the road commission, you've talked to different people within that area, you know, and you've taken that in consideration. What we're doing right here is the process. We don't have to do a public hearing. We are in public. People have a right to come and speak at the 2-minute public comments, so everything we're doing is, you know, how it's supposed to be done. I will say this, last year, with the road being open, I thought it was very dangerous to have families walking up and down the sidewalks and crossing the street with people clipping by pretty quick.
We actually had one of the managers at Food Town, who's on our committee too, she said that she actually saw a child almost get hit by a car when he was trying to cross the street to face paint. So that was kind of scary.
The bottom line is, events like this bring people downtown Temperance. They bring people from out of the area, and ultimately, it's economic development, and we need boosts down there as much as we can. So I appreciate your hard work in doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
Any questions for her, or Ms. Stanberry?
Well, member of the public asked about notifying the residents. You talked about notifying the businesses. Has the residents been?
We haven't walked the street to notify any residents yet. So there's only one street that has no outlet, and I apologize, I totally forgot to bring the map with me. I cannot remember what street that is. Orchard, yep, thank you. There's only one street that doesn't have an outlet, that what we're gonna do is we're gonna have like a soft closure there. The street, we're going to leave.
Excuse me, wait, what is soft closure?
Meaning, well, yeah, sorry, that's what I was gonna get to.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
The middle of the street is going to be left open, like there's not gonna be tents and stuff in the middle of the street. So if somebody has to get out of Orchard, we're gonna have somebody there manning that can direct them and head them south and out of the way. They can head south on Lewis Avenue and go around to get to where they need to go. So we won't be blocking them in, and we're also leaving the street open in the middle too. Like, we'll have tents and stuff set up on the sides, but like if there's an emergency, like I said, I talked to the sheriff's department, and we told them if there's an absolute emergency, I mean, they'll know the plan before and the routes, but if somebody has to get through, we can walk and guide them through.
Can you help me with 1600? Sorry.
From
9 to 1600?
I'm sorry, that's military time.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I
Yeah,
never
that's
was, so.
3 p.m.
3,
Or
okay.
4
16 is
p.m.
4.
Sorry.
4?
4.
Okay.
We just want to make, it'll probably be open before 4. We just want to make sure everybody can get off the streets, like the vendors and stuff like
Okay,
that.
I'm thinking about people getting back and forth to work, because, I mean, I guess businesses are fine with, you know, the people walking, but people are going to be going to work between 9 and 4.
Correct.
So.
And I understand, and I apologize for the inconvenience, but there are alternative routes that they can take.
And you're going to have signage or people?
There's
or-
going to be signage, and we're going to have people helping with that too. And there's turnaround spots on there too, so we're going to have kind of like soft closure where it says road closed ahead to through traffic at the outlying intersections, and then there'll be hard closures where people can't go past and they can turn around in those different areas.
Okay, could I ask, and it's up to you, you know, do what you want to do, but could I ask that you put in paper boxes or something, this whole map?
Absolutely, and we definitely want to give people a heads up on it. I guess I didn't want to alert anybody if I didn't know if this is going to pass or what questions
Well,
you guys have, so absolutely.
I mean, the newspapers don't get distributed anymore. You know, a lot of people like myself don't bother with Facebook or anything online, so I think communication is a key.
Absolutely.
And however you think to do that for my generation, who reads the newspaper, but there isn't any, I would appreciate it.
Would you approve too, like putting a notice in the Bedford Press that does get delivered for free to every Bedford resident? And we do plan on putting articles advertising this, and we could also put a picture of the map or no alternative routes. I have no problem doing that. 'Cause
Whatever, I appreciate your committee, so whatever you do, I'm just asking that you put an emphasis on communication to the residents.
Yes.
Mr. Matry?
I didn't know, like, what is the festival? Like, what is the festival and why, like, why are why the roads are needing to be shut down?
So some of us business owners got together, residents, managers in the area, and we decided that we wanted to put on a nice street festival, bringing in face painting, dunk tanks. We're going to have photo booths. Businesses are welcome to set up a table. Businesses outside of Temperance are allowed to have booths too. Craft vendors.
Food trucks?
Food trucks, thank you. Whatever we can get out that way. Entertainment, we had the Bedford Marching Band perform before. We're looking to get like Twirl, Michigan, kind of schedule different events throughout the day. A lot of that last year happened in Foodtown parking lot, but if we can even get some entertainment on the street too, that would just be fantastic. The bigger and better we can make it, the more fun it's going to be for everybody. And the main reason for closing down the street is for safety, because like we said and Paul mentioned, kids, just jotting out in front of traffic, if they're trying to cross the street, because we have stuff on both sides of the street, just trying to make it as safe as possible.
So, okay, so this is, all right. I like didn't know what the festival was like at all. Like I was like looking through and I'm like, I didn't know what was happening. Is this something that would be able to be done at like utilized car park? And I didn't know, that was the other question, was what was the plan for like parking and that kind of thing?
Good question. So the reason why we want to have it in downtown Temperance is because it's really put on a lot by the owners, business owners in downtown Temperance. They do a lot of the sponsorships. They also do a lot of the booths, dunk tanks, face painting, bounce houses. They supply those. So it's also trying to bring foot traffic into those businesses too. Like Barb from Vintage Finds and Redesign is here. She has a storefront right there in downtown Temperance, and that was one of her best days. She offered an amazing deal, and people were in and out of her store that never had noticed her store maybe before or gone into it. So we're just trying to bring some attraction to the businesses in Temperance. So that's by having it there.
The businesses that'll be affected by it are Sunoco, like them. People aren't going to be able to get to them to get gas during that time, but he's okay with it. He understands the importance of bringing people into downtown Temperance. Now, your business, people will be walking down, they'll be walking in your store, and you'll get a lot of business that day, so, I think it's great, though, that you've knocked on their doors to let them know.
Yeah, and that's very important for Abe of Sunoco, because this is actually going to cost him thousands of dollars for being not closed, but he's not really going to have that traffic, but he's on board with it because he understands the safety and just bringing people down to Temperance. So, yeah, we're very happy about that.
Do we know what the traffic counts are on those are just main streets? That was like my biggest thing was just, man, those are main streets to have shut down all day on a Saturday. That's why I was just like, I didn't know anything about like what it was. So I was just trying to think like, how would you be able to do a festival downtown and not have it shut down? So I don't know, who would know the traffic? Road Commission.
Yeah.
And find like traffic numbers on that kind of thing.
I'm sorry too, you asked about parking. What we did last year and what we're doing again this year is, last year, people were able to park at Northwest Christian Church and for free. Was it Erie Transit? Bedford Transit.
Lake Erie Transit.
Lake Erie Transit, yeah. Sorry, that would shuttle people back and forth, and the drop-off spot was Monroe Bank and Trust. So again, keeping them off Lewis Avenue, they can enter from Temperance Road.
Federal grant.
And that worked out fantastic.
Ms. Hirschberger?
Go ahead.
I just want to know if you're going to have signs for people out of town where the parking is. I mean, how that...
So it's going to be in advertisements. I know last year when we did this, we did advertise in the paper and on Facebook. We create a Facebook event, and we do put it in the paper to park at Northwest Christian Church. And there's a shuttle that takes you back and forth, and we have signs for the shuttle pickup at the church and shuttle drop-off and pick up at Mineral Bank and Trust.
Okay.
Yeah.
The neighbors love it. I mean, they walk from, there's how many different neighborhoods connected to that area? I mean, behind food, they can all walk to it. But the shuttle, I think Mount Carmel maybe was gonna be a drop-off area. This year there'll be two drop-off areas.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
So, one from the north and one from the
Yep,
west.
and when you guys talk about, like, you know, closing the street and why it needs to be done, last year, when we pushed for this event, I would say there was close to 3,000 people that showed up throughout the day. And that was advertising it only over a few weeks, because it was kind of last minute thing that we did. And so we're going to be pushing it, announcing the date. We haven't even announced the date yet until now, but we're going to be pushing and advertising it. So if we could get over 5,000 people, that would be fantastic.
TC, but real quick, the church is gonna have a wedding that day on the corner.
I have left them a message, a very detailed message, and I haven't heard back yet.
Okay.
So I don't know what time the wedding's taking place. And we'll certainly do everything in our power to
Coordinate
help
with
with
them.
that. If the wedding starts at 4, like, let's open the road at 3, like, we'll figure something out. So I'm just waiting to hear back from them. I haven't heard.
Mr. Clements?
Were you first?
Yeah, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't talk? I thought you did,
No,
okay.
I let Nancy
Oh, go
finish.
ahead, Ms. Hirschberger.
Did you consider closing south of Orchard, just so that we don't have to worry about that road?
It is south of, and again, I'm sorry, I do not have the map
Orchard
in
is
front
the
of me.
only one that
Well, it
doesn't
shows,
have,
The
and
map
it
shows
shows
it
it
as south
closing
of
north.
Park.
just south of South Park Drive is closed hard.
Thank you.
And then just south of that is Orchard, where you have the purple for the soft closer.
Okay, I believe why we
For the
didn't,
businesses on
or why we wanted that one closed is because we're gonna have a car show at Whitney's, so that's gonna bring a lot of foot traffic. I'm sorry, it's now, Gerber, having the car show there and the vacant lot across the street. So if, we're just worried, like, what's gonna be the turnaround spot there? Is it gonna get congested, with people walking through and seeing all the classic cars?
And then, second question, I see the fire department's gonna be doing a lot. Is there any talk of compensation, or is that a chief question?
Well, the chief can talk about that, because the chief, they do this for many different events throughout the township, and they don't charge. It's kind of an incurred cost. So go ahead, chief, he can speak to it if you want.
Yeah, we, first and foremost, we reviewed the safety plan that they had, and we feel like we can still provide for the safety, for the safety of the residents. But we did decide that they're probably, based on the numbers they were discussing last year, we would have to have some coverage on site that day, just because we've got a larger number of visitors than normal. This is really going to be something, this is the first time that we've utilized a new process as far as the fire department goes, for requiring them to fill this information out and deliver the life safety information and the planning information so we could review it. We do have, we did set up, when we revamped the cost recovery, we do reserve the right to, I believe, or Mr. Goldsmith can correct me, but I believe we reserve the right to recover that costs. Currently, there are 2 festivals that we don't use the cost recovery from, and essentially we will work up a budget estimate for how much it's going to be and look for direction from the board. The cost recovery is there, but we're probably going to need to work with the board to discuss whether it will be something that's waived and incurred in our budget, or whether it's something that we want to utilize cost recovery and present or recover the cost of it. So I think it's probably a little premature today, but we can certainly, if it's something the board's going to entertain, we can certainly get those numbers around and get some feedback. I think that we probably, for each festival that comes through, when there does need to be coverage or help, we should probably look at it and address it based on merit for the request.
This will be the first one that we cover that is not a township.
Currently, the trade fair we provide coverage for, and the
The
fireworks
schools.
we provide
And the
coverage
fires are
for.
part.
So, yeah, those are the 2 that
So
we
this would be
have requested
a citizen
coverage.
one, this will be the first time.
And again, we'll look for board direction on how we should handle that.
Mr. Clements?
Chief, while you're standing there, outside of the cost, you're good with all the routing? Don't anticipate any problems from a fire or emergency response standpoint?
We do not, my understanding is that we will have the ability to get through the intersection if necessary. But part of the coverage the level of coverage we had is so that we can still provide for the residents
Right.
on the east. What would be coming from Station 1 on the west through to the east. So-
And then my other question is, when you talked with the sheriff's office, they were good? Did they get a chance to see the map, and they're also okay with response and?
So they didn't see the map yet. I just spoke with him today, but without even seeing it, he mentioned that there'd be no issue, but he does want me to follow up with a map
Okay.
and the routes, and like I said, they'll have somebody there. And one thing I forgot to mention too, we discussed also parking, and I don't know if this is gonna happen for sure, but like we discussed having a fire truck too at the north closure, kind of parked sideways, like as another kind of closure for traffic coming through. And also so residents can come out and meet the fire department, see the fire truck, might kind of have some cool stuff. And at the south end, having one of the ambulances there too, kind of as another closure. And something our committee also does too is we're a nonprofit committee. We give money back. We choose a charity with our events. And there's actually been discussion of having the fire department as that charitable donation for this event. Because I don't know what that costs the fire department, but
Gotcha.
we are considering that. So I don't know if that helps too, but.
Okay. And then the only other thing is, I would just echo what Ms. Tenenberry said about making sure that we do everything we can to notify the residents. I know
Absolutely.
the residents of Temperance are proud and usually get behind this kind of stuff, but I would think just common courtesy and good neighbor would dictate that we really go out of our way to make sure everybody knows the times and.
And I agree with that 100%. We just haven't advertised or said anything about it just because we're waiting for approval, so.
So I'm looking here, the church could go down Lawrence Street and North Park. They can get right through the neighborhood to get to Car Park, so shouldn't be an issue there from them
Yep.
getting back and forth, so.
Yep.
Would it be, I don't know how many houses are in Orchard, but I know you said you were going to put something in the paper to.
Correct.
Would it be feasible to just talk to those neighbors? Just so
Absolutely.
there's no chance of them missing this, since they will be more affected than anyone else?
Absolutely, and I appreciated Ms. Tenberry's comment too about even, like, if they're not home, drop a flyer in there that speaks specifically about that and the routes to take too. So, yep, we would be happy to do that.
Got a quick-
Mr. Francis?
What was the issue on Orchard?
It's the only side street that has no outlet other than Lewis Avenue.
It does have an outlet,
Village.
right by the Village Pizza.
Village, yeah, you could get, you
It's
can
not
get right
on the
through there.
map.
It's-
If
Yeah,
if it
it
has
does-
an outlet,
Villages,
that's.
it's Villages like
alley.
parking lot more or less.
Oh, that
Village to-
little-
Village to Orchard.
Oh.
It's an
Like
alley,
Dustin.
really,
Okay.
but it's been there forever.
Okay,
So
we
that
just
would
wanna be
even
sure
make
that
it
those
easier.
are-
to get in and out.
fantastic, yeah, yeah, I
With the
appreciate that.
Yeah, if you could get Village on board with that, then that'd probably be a simple fix.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure Village will want to participate in the event, so I'm sure they'll be happy with that.
Mr. Francis?
It was mentioned earlier that there's a wedding at the church at the corner.
Yeah, at Abundant Life.
Has anyone checked to see what is planned for the car park and its two facilities down there?
They're not using the facilities. at
Yeah,
Car Park.
we're not using
I
car
know,
park.
but someone is.
It's someone
It's the
renting.
wedding, right? It's the wedding that
Yeah,
has,
the church rented it.
the church did. And like I said, I've left a message with the church, a very detailed message last week, and I haven't heard back. Because we're looking to see, okay, what time's the wedding? What can we do? How can we help them? Because we don't want to inconvenience them at all. But there are routes to take around the closure to get to Car Park from the church.
I was just interested to make sure that the people that are renting those facilities are aware of it.
Yeah.
And I don't think leaving a message is good enough. I think we need to meet with them face to face.
Right,
Not
right,
we, but-
absolutely.
And I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that you had planned to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Any more questions or discussion?
One more.
Okay, Ms. Hertzberger?
It's okay.
The turnaround spots, I'm assuming you've spoke to all of them, and they're all okay with using their locations as turnaround spots?
Not every single one of them, but 3 out of the 4, yes.
Which one haven't you yet? Just
Scoops
Scoop?
and
Okay,
Deckers.
okay.
I don't think
Thank
we'll
you.
have a problem with Decker.
I don't think so either, but no, I haven't made that connection yet.
I'll talk to him for you.
Oh, thank you. And like I said, I've reached out to all the businesses. All the ones that I've heard from so far have said yes. I'm waiting to hear back from 7 of them. But I haven't met any resistance from them, so.
Ms. Tinderberry?
Just one more thing. I wanted to acknowledge the fact that we have before us tonight, a note that someone phoned the township hall today to voice her opinion regarding the road closure issue on the agenda. She's totally against the road closure of either Lewis and/or Temperance Road, and I know we all have read this, but I wanted to acknowledge publicly that that did come in, and it's something we need to consider.
Correct. So before we go forward with the resolution, I would just ask that you just bring us the information back, the questions we had, just answer those before we go forward. That way, there's less questions when the resolution is before us.
So that's supposed to be at the next meeting then, or what?
Whenever
mean the
she's
one that-
able to get the information,
Okay.
then we can put it on
Okay.
the next available meeting.
You're talking about the resolution from the road commission that?
The resolution that we have to approve to send to the road commission to ask for their
that-
approval
Yeah,
of
that's
it.
what I mean, there,
Mhm.
yeah, okay.
Yes.
And so just to confirm, like what you guys are looking for is contact from Village Pizza to make sure that they'd be okay with us using that alley for traffic. Making sure all 4 of the contact turnaround spots are approved. And then notifying, I guess,
Residents.
yeah. Well, now that there's that outlet, what all residents would you like to see notified at this time? Since now that, if Village does allow drive-through for the alley.
I would still like to see Orchard
Orchard, okay.
notified.
Okay,
I mean, the thing in the paper is a good idea for the residents to see it, but Orchard is affected so
Yeah,
much
but
that I
she's
would-
kind of asking, though, do you want her to knock on doors in this general area where it's closed down? I mean, to get
I was
approval
asking her
to
to do
let
that
them
in
know?
Orchard.
Oh,
And
just in
I-
Orchard.
Okay, that wasn't me. I
No, that
want-
was me.
Yeah, I would like to see better communication with all of the village residents if I'm going to work that morning and I don't read the paper or I don't have Facebook, I think that, I don't know, you don't have to knock on doors, stick something in their door. Go-
After
just go
approval.
door to door, kind of like
After approval, though, you don't want
politicians
her to go knocking on 500, 600, 700 doors before she gets approved. I mean, they're spending a ton of
do.
time.
No, right.
They're not
once
going to
it's
get
been
approval.
No, I agree, once it's been approved, but I think that, like I said, politicians go door to door and stick stuff in your door. So I think this, as a courtesy to the residents, can put something in the door too.
No, I agree 100%, but I'm saying after we approve and move
Yeah,
forward.
yeah.
Mr. Steiner?
After you get the approval, a couple of things. Bedford now would be good, of course, because it goes out to everyone. Do you plan on having any large signs posted? I mean, to me, that works better than a mailbox, because I know some people, you go around and you'll see junk in mailboxes that is so brown and withered because it's left in there.
right.
Because they just don't pull that stuff out, or people pull it out, oh, this is junk mail, I'm throwing it out.
Right.
If it doesn't pertain to them, it's a bill or something, it's gone. So I think some good signage up front would be a good communication tool, especially at the main intersections there. So maybe something that, be near your closure points. Because one of the things you're gonna have a hard time with is the control over the hard closure and soft closure. When you get to that soft closure, is somebody going to stop cars and say, I need to see your license, do you belong down here? Or if they're coming from Ohio, are they coming in? Say, well, you said there's parking downtown, am I allowed to go through? But maybe they're not, maybe they really just want to go all the way through. So how are you going to control that piece?
Well, and the only soft closure was Orchard. So if Orchard does have an outlet, so there's soft closures at, like the outskirts, like,
That's the ones I'm referring to.
okay, yeah, it'll say like road closed ahead to through traffic.
You got Erie.
Yeah.
Erie and Lewis, you've got Dean and Lewis. Temperance and Jackman, and then Temperance and Crab.
Yeah, and that, I mean, it's not really a closure, it's just like a road closed ahead to through traffic, so they'll know, so when they get to the hard closures, they can't go through. The only people that are gonna be going through is going to be emergency vehicles, if Orchard has an outlet, that I didn't notice, so that,
And then there is one other check mark, that some driveways will be closed off. Have those people been talked and discussed with them yet, that their driveways will be closed?
are you referring to the ones,
It says, will any private driveways or entry points be blocked? And you have yes.
there's one residential that I'm aware of. The other ones are vacant, unless I'm missing a building.
I think the only one is next to the Lewis Avenue Auto Shop. Right across the street from Food Town, there's a house right there. So
Okay.
that one.
Okay, so
And
then there's
the old
two.
farmhouse right next to it would be the other one, so there's two.
Yeah, there's a couple there,
So
both
we'll
sides.
just make sure you need to talk to them and let them know.
Correct, okay.
Anybody have any more questions or comments? Thank
I
you very much, we
your
appreciate it.
comments, so thank you.
Okay, item 8C, request for approval of a resolution showing the board's position on legislation regarding nonpartisan township offices. Ms. Hirschberger?
This is from the MTA. They were just asking our board to vote one way or another, so they have direction. They've asked this of all townships in Michigan, so that MTA can form an opinion. I don't know if you've had time to read all of it. There's arguments supporting, arguments opposing. And all this is how we want them to view, do we want the elected officials to be able to run as nonpartisan, or do we want to keep that partisan on the ballot?
Being that, excuse me, being that no decision that I'm aware of since I've been on the board has ever been decided based on a party, I think this is a good idea. Local government should be nonpartisan. What issue could come up that would matter if you're an R or a D or any other party? I can't think of anything. We're all here trying to do what we think is best for the entire citizenry of Bedford Township. I don't think party ought to enter into it, so I think this is a good idea to support this.
I second that motion.
Is that a motion, Mr. Francis?
I can make it that way if you'd like. I thought we were just discussing it at this
Mr.
We
point.
can
but-
discuss after the motion is.
You could
Sure.
just-
Yeah.
Okay. Motion in support of Ms. Tinneberry. Discussion, Mr. Clemens?
So in that I'm in my first term, when I ran the first time, I think I completely agreed, because we largely don't vote along party lines. Except, I think there's a lot to be said, excuse me, when you read the opposition to it, in that a lot, I guess the biggest one to me is township board's decisions can reflect the expansiveness or the limitedness of government. I think that traditionally, and I'm not trying to oversimplify, party ideology tells a voter very quickly a little bit about where you identify. And I think in a world where most residents largely get tired of hearing campaign speeches and reading campaign literature, I think for people to be able to make a quick association as to where they begin to look and follow a candidate is relative. I think it also impacts the voter's choice. When you declare, you then go out and defend that declaration, and the voters get to say yes or no. Either your ideas resonate and or your party affiliation. So those were two arguments that traditionally I had not rested heavily on, but in reading this, I think they need to be discussed.
No, I agree. I mean, when you see somebody's R or D on the ballot, yeah, it might not make any difference here, but it says a little bit about the person. Ms. Tinneberry?
It's an option. It's an option. If the person wants to declare that they're a Republican or Democrat, they can run in that way. It doesn't say that all township elected officials have to appear non-partisan, but it says it is the option to have its elected officers appear as nonpartisan. So I mean, it's offering an option to someone who definitely does not follow party lines, and I think that that's most people. And I think, you know, I don't think, we all ran as Republicans, basically, and I don't think we need to fear that somebody who's nonpartisan might get more votes because most of the population is nonpartisan. I think it's an option, and I think that Paul's motion was right on. Why should we refuse someone the option to do that? You have an option to run as a partisan or not, so.
Mr. Montroy?
I would agree too, like, that, like, initially, you, at first glance, yeah, why would that, I would totally agree. And then, like, same thing with how many decisions are you making that are party line decisions with this board? But like, I mean, I've thought about this a lot and like going through different stuff. Like you said, party affiliations help a voter know the candidate's values. For the, as it being a nonpartisan, as some communities become more politically polarized, party affiliation disadvantages candidates who identify with community's minority party. So it's like the minority, it's helping people who do not reflect the majority of a community. Township issues seldom align with political party ideologies. I don't necessarily agree with that. Veteran township officials are at risk of losing elections as their communities shift political party alignments. I have no idea how that's bad. That makes no sense. Why that would be, like, why, I don't know why they would say that. But there is no, and then at the very bottom, there's no when they talk about voter fatigue, maybe would be able to transfer, but it says there's no assurance of that happening either, because of, if you have a nonpartisan section, it's at the end of a long ballot, results in fewer votes for that section. So I would, on the face, I agree, but I would be with TC on this of, when I'm going through what the arguments are for and against for each.
Mr. Steiner?
Mr. Clements has his hand up, I'll let him go.
I just needed to ask a clarifying question to Ms. Tenenberry. Were you talking about the optional statement largely in the first main paragraph? Is that where you had read that?
Sorry. No,
I'm sorry to put you on the spot, because
No,
as I
read
read
back
it.
here, be resolved, be it resolved.
Be it resolved, okay, thank you. Because in the first paragraph, it talks in terms of the optional as to the township, not the candidate. So ultimately, the township would be making the decision as to whether declaration would be critical. So I may have misread that.
Mr. Steiner?
And that's partly where I was headed, because if you read that, and I guess we need to know what the real interpretation is, because the first sentence says that elective Michigan Township offices should be nonpartisan. Didn't say whether you can run as nonpartisan, Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever. It says your Michigan Township offices nonpartisan. So that would mean, to me, it says you're saying that the entire board should be declared nonpartisan.
Exactly.
This is not whether you want to run nonpartisan or not. This is whether you want the board to be nonpartisan. And correct me if I'm reading that wrong. I mean, glad to hear, other opinions on it, but I think that's what they're saying.
The other thing, too, is in the be it resolved section, the opposition to legislation that would allow township boards the option to have its elected leaders appear as nonpartisan on a ballot. It doesn't give the option to the candidate. The option is to the board. And so I would want some clarification there.
Mr. Francis?
That's the way I interpret it, that it's a township decision, not a candidate decision.
Yeah.
The question that I have is, what does a nonpartisan ballot do when we can have straight party ticket? Straight party voting? Where does that show up? I have to defer to Trudy on that one, because I don't know the answer to that
If
one.
you're nonpartisan, if the board went nonpartisan, you would fall into the nonpartisan category, which is further on the ballot. When you get to the judges and it's nonpartisan.
So it would
that's
not
where
be subject to
No.
the straight party?
It's
In other
just
words-
like you vote straight party and it goes through all the parties, and then you get to the judges and it's nonpartisan, then you have to vote individually, so
So
that's where it
people
would
that
fall.
vote straight party might miss that and say, I don't have time to fool with that.
Correct.
That was also another concern.
Yeah.
And that's where one of the pros would be, and it's suggested, but no guarantees, that maybe a solution would be to prevent the voter fatigue, to moving it to the gubernatorial elections. But of course, there's no assurance they can do that, because it'll, that'd be a whole, litany of things to get it off the general election, move it to gubernatorial.
There's very limited information here for you to make a decision on. But reading between the lines, it says a state representative intends to introduce and actively promote legislation to make nonpartisan township offices optional to townships. So I interpret that, for instance, judgeships are nonpartisan. That's statewide. Is this legislation going to give the option to each, how many townships are in the state of Michigan?
1,200.
Okay, to each of the 1,200 townships in the state to determine whether it will be nonpartisan for the township elected officials versus partisan. You could have, there's not a whole lot of information here upon which to make a decision, but I think what it means is that this legislation, which is yet to be seen or reviewed, would give our township the ability to make the township elected offices nonpartisan versus partisan. And then that's the way we would do it in Bedford if that legislation is passed, and the township, at some point in time, the township is going to have to declare, are we partisan or nonpartisan for our elected officials? And who makes that decision? It doesn't say. Does the township board make that decision? Does that go to a vote of the people of the township? There's limited information here upon which to make a decision.
Well, we have a motion and a second.
Oh,
Would you like to call, do you want to have a question?
he might want to withdraw his motion.
Do you want to withdraw your motion, or do you want to go through?
No, motion stands.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with it going through.
Yeah.
This is just a temperature taking anyway. It's a poll. It's not anything more than that. The township MTA had that come up prior to when they set the schedule for the convention. It would have probably been on for the township to vote, or the townships to vote at that conference. Because this came in after that, it was too late, they could not do that. So now they're polling all the townships by letter to see how the townships feel, is my take on this.
Yeah, if you as a township board believe it would be in the best interest of this township for it to elect its township elected officials, the trustees, the supervisor, the clerk, and the treasurer, on a nonpartisan basis, move forward with the motion. The details will have to be determined by this legislation, and actually, first the legislation has to be introduced, it has to make it through the process, and it has to be voted in, and it's gonna have to have details in how each township would be able to do that. But if the concept is good to you as a township board, and you think that would be in the best interest of the township residents, then move forward with it.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Could you please call the roll?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
If it's going to happen, I think the people should have that decision, not this board. No.
Mr. Clemens?
No.
Mr. Montry?
Nope.
Hirschberger votes no. Mr. Peroni?
No, and the motion failed. 5-2. Okay, moving on.
We only have two real Republicans on this.
D, request for approval of the MCRC contract for Bedford Center Road from Section Road to the Ohio State line. Mr. Francis?
Excuse me. This is a contract that a project that our road committee has been working on for quite some time, a couple of years at least. It started out as a much smaller project until you get into it and see how bad the condition of that road is. And it is Bedford Center Road from Section Road to the Ohio line. It's about 1.32 miles in length. It's a primary road, which means the road commission is really the primary responsibility for that road, but they have a limited number of funds that they can spend on it. this total contract is, I mentioned it's 1.32 miles in length. It's a hot mix asphalt surfacing, widening, there's drainage involved, there's resurfacing involved, there's earthwork to be done, there's trees to be removed. It's got a lot of moving parts to it because the road hasn't been touched in a long time. The total for the project is estimated by the Road Commission to be $895,400, of which the township share is $193,400, and the Road Commission's share is $702,000. We have this already projected in our budget proposal for next fiscal year, and this would be a 2019-2020 road project. Are there any questions that I might answer on this?
Ms. Stinevery?
Is there an explanation as to why the construction engineering is only $5,600 by the Road Commission and $73,000 by the township? I mean, they're the ones constructing it and they have engineers, so why is the big part of the engineering on us?
Well, I think most of them are like that because the Road Commission has kind of gotten away from engineering on the major parts of the engineering, because we've had to do that on all of our projects.
I know.
Their 5,000 just an oversight, or, oversight of the engineering done by our engineers.
I get that they dump it onto us, but I don't think that that's right. They can hire out engineers, that maybe they don't have them on their staff, full-time staff, but, and I know they have more than you think they do. I just think that's wrong. Okay, then my other question is, 73,000 is, far exceeds our $20,000 bid policy. Are we bidding this out?
We don't have to bid out engineering because they're our township engineers.
We don't have to do a lot of things, but we should do them.
Well, I mean,
Maybe we could get this cheaper.
but they are our township engineers. We did a bid where we went out and bid all of our engineering, and they gave us the best quote out of all four.
When was that?
4 years ago, Trudy, 5 years ago?
It wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago, where we had multiple engineering companies submit their bids and their prices, and they're our engineers who do all of our engineering. If we want to put it out for bid again, we can, but that's not how we work. Once we have an engineer, they do all of our projects.
We have a signed contract for engineering? Is that what you're saying?
They gave us a quote on an hourly rate based on their
It was the
different
lowest.
levels, and we picked Manick Smith because they, I think, were the lowest in that group and one that had done work for us for 40 years or more.
Correct.
So we're just handing $73,000 over to them because the answer is they're our township engineers.
Yeah. That's why we bid it out. If we didn't want to bid it out to have one engineer, then why did we? We should bid out every single project.
Well, I mean, this is a road Road Commission project. It's not a township project.
I think this
Okay,
is, I think this is
all
our
right,
share. I'm just saying, I think that the 193 was our share of it.
No, that 73,400.
Oh, I get it, but I'm saying we were required to put in so much money into the project.
Okay,
And so they
then
probably just put engineering into our category,
who did?
the road commission.
Okay, enough said.
Any more comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the contract with the Road Commission for the road improvement project on Whiteford Center Road from Section Road to the Ohio line as presented. Our share being $193,400, the Road Commission share being $702,000, the total being $895,400.
Motion is supported, discussion. I just want to say, for the 2 years that, well, I've been in full-time, and you know, I didn't deal with as much as a trustee, but I have been extremely pleased with Manigan Smith and the work they've done, you know, in the timely manner, where the costs come in at. I mean, I know, you know, some of these prices seem high, but ultimately, you know, they gave us the best quote 4 years ago. So, I mean, I've had nothing but a good dealings with them, so. Would you call the roll, please?
Excuse me?
Mrs. Tinneberry? I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
I take offense to the fact that because I question the engineering, $73,000 on a project, that it becomes down to a personal level with Manigan Smith. It has nothing to do with Manigan Smith. It has nothing to do with whether you like them or I like them or I like them. I don't have to dislike them in order to want to save the township money. $73,000 is a huge amount that we don't bid. And this is just one aspect of us not bidding. To me, it's being irresponsible to the taxpayers because we're not watching over the finances, in my opinion, as we should. So it has nothing to do with any personal who likes who.
If this board wants to bid out individually every project and everything we do for engineering, then we need to move on that. But that's not what we voted on 4 years ago, or 5 years ago. I mean, Nancy, it's not a bad thing you're saying. I mean, we probably would save here and there on some projects. I'm not saying, I didn't say because you said we should bid it out that it's a personal thing with Manigan Smith. I'm just saying that's not what we did 4.5 years ago. If we want to put it out for bid, you know, let's put it out for bid, you know, but. Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 9, comments from the public. Comments limited to 5 minutes.
The telegram.
Oh, the telegram, oh,
Telegram.
item AE, telesystem. One more here. So we added the telesystems communication evaluation and proposal to the agenda. We talked about it quite a bit in the beginning of the meeting as to why. It has to do with our phones are outdated. They can't be replaced, and I believe they don't align. IT Right had a real hard time even getting them to line up with the internet, right?
It had a hard time rebooting the phone
Rebooting
system,
the
and they
phone
said that the phones are so outdated that there's a possibility that they'll go down and won't reboot.
So with our phones in that state, we're getting the free upgrade for the phones, and we're saving $2 per phone line per month. At 44 lines, it ends up being almost, you know, over $5,000. So with the savings and us getting upgraded phones, and this was put out for bid a while ago, you know, they are kind of a local company, but, so that's why it's on here. Like I said in the beginning, we don't have to. I can always go back to them and say, you know, we do need to put this out for bid, but I don't believe we're gonna, at the end of it, see the $17.50 price. Mr. Steiner?
Just a couple of things. So if we were to do something like this, I mean, granted, it's a cost reduction right off the bat. But the big thing is, since they're going to host the system, are we going to have a new, like a voicemail system included? It's still going to be the same old thing? Because I'll tell you what we've got is terrible. You call into Township Hall, and if you don't get the person you want, it dies there, and you don't have an option to say, well, I couldn't get a hold of Trudy, go back so I can dial Paul.
Can I tell you how to solve that problem?
One other thing, and the other one is if you call somebody and you don't know their extension, and it says, enter the first 3 letters of their first name, I think it is, and then it just goes there. But what if we've got more than one person with that same name? It doesn't give you the option, it just goes there.
We do. I get these calls a lot.
Our phone tree, it does, it's terrible.
That's what I'm
I
saying.
can't stand it, I wish, but the only way to solve it is to have a receptionist. Somebody answering the phones.
Well, what's wrong with the
I can
system
make
handling it?
2 changes to that. One, I
telling
can
you.
make a change where it won't hang up on you. It'll just go back into the menu again. I can change that because it's set up like that to just die because people hit 0, it just ends the call. So we can change that. 2, I can change it to dial by last name rather than first name. That might fix the problem of, if you're talking like
That
Paul
would
and
be a
Paul.
huge help there.
I can
go to
change
last
that
name.
also.
I get phone calls for the clerk's department, the treasurer department daily, and the ordinance department, because I'm the first on the list. So if they don't want to wait through the list, they just hit one. Or if they wait
think we
another
all
one.
get
And we all get calls, but
calls.
I mean, I get a lot of calls
I
that
don't
are
have,
from my
I don't have a
department.
problem you getting all my calls.
So I mean, I don't know how else we could get around it other than her changing it rather than somebody answering the phone and.
I mean,
sending it to
honestly,
a proper
people are
person.
busy and they don't want to wait. They want to be able to hear that voicemail, says I can punch a number and get there, because people hate those, going through a menu anyway.
Right.
Today's society moves 10 times faster than, probably 1,000 times faster than our system does.
Yeah. The only other way is, like
But I
you
think
said,
go
we
to the
get a
last name, that-
receptionist, or
at least
we
that's a big
direct
help.
0 to one person's desk, and they get all the phone calls where they hit 0.
Yeah, but you could still run on that issue though, because you don't have, how many employees do we have? 27 or something in the building, 25? I mean, that's a lot of employees to go through. I mean, that's the thing, people are, they call, they want to talk to somebody.
How many phones do we have?
44.
That's the fire department too.
Yeah, that's the fire department and the police department, 44 total.
Is that like community ed too?
No,
No?
no.
What is do you know, what's this A for like the business line essential? Like what is that?
It takes, what you're looking at, it takes account into the voicemail system that we have. It's like a switchboard built in, because we don't have a receptionist per se.
Do you guys know what the?
You got talking to the mic, guys.
You know what the hosted station fiber transport is?
I think that's also part of the switchboard, because we don't have an operator.
To
There's
be
a
able to
lot
have
of
like what you guys are
components.
talking about of flipping through?
I think our elevator has a phone line too.
No, we eliminated that.
Did we eliminate that?
Yeah.
Finally? Okay.
We eliminated 2 phone lines when we
I thought
changed
there
the
was
habitat.
3 to it and we got it down to 1 or something like
We
that.
eliminated 2 phone lines.
2 phone, okay. There's been discussion too, I mean, from Al Pryor, why do we even, is there a better way to do it? Do we have to have all these phone lines? I mean, can we use, a different device, a mobile device, because, but I don't think can be set up like that, And Craig brought it up too, is there another way to do it to avoid the, it's a big cost. 44 phones, $17.50 a month per line. It's a lot of money. So,
I looked a while back when I brought it up, I looked into, similar to what we have at my employment, where it goes through your computer system, and it goes right through Outlook and Skype. And the responses I got back were not favorable to what we have to be able to do that. But that is a great way to get away from the true phone charges, if we ever get to that point where our system can accommodate that. Because somebody dials in, I can see right on my screen, it says, Paul Francis is calling me.
hang up.
Yeah.
No, send a voicemail. But no, you can see that,
Yeah,
and
it has a small ability. If you get a voicemail while you're gone, it will come through Outlook, so you can listen to that message and call them back. It does have that ability. I don't know how many people actually utilize that. I
yeah.
do.
The one I'm talking about, though, you can
But,
actually,
yeah.
you speak through your actual system.
Yeah, this also has the ability, it has an app where you could put it on your phone and use your cell phone like you're at work using that phone. It has an app that will do that, which this current phone system doesn't. So it's either give out your personal cell phone if you're on vacation or something, or, so it's got a couple different abilities. Another ability it has is right now this goes through our internet, of course, the fiber optics, and it's slowing down the computers. This would have its own line, so it wouldn't slow down the computers. It's a better phone per se than we have now. But as far as the actual system itself, voicemail and such, that would stay the same. It is a plug and play.
He did say after the 5 years, though, this could cut down another $5 per phone.
Right.
Could potentially go down to
Correct.
12.
And what was the savings per month currently? if
Per
we
savings, just for
adopt
$1
this?
is $2,700 a year on $1 per phone
And-
per month.
No charge replacement on all the equipment, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, it's all covered.
right now.
And that was my
Paul's
question
phone
back
is-
in 2011, after this ended, in 2000, whatever, 15, well, why didn't we see a reduction? We were paying $23.50 per phone per month at one point, and then $19.50, so I asked them, they didn't have an answer, so. We'll stay on it.
And the last thing too, I mean, I do see again, it's got a 12, renew for 12 months at a time automatically unless we provide them in writing 90 days before. So at least it's got the out clause on there. I mean, I do agree a little bit with what Nancy said about a company coming through and saying, I want an answer by this or take it,
I didn't
leave
get
it.
that feeling, I don't know if they talked.
But I will
Trudy
tell you
differently, but-
that, you know, telecommunications and all the stuff we have out there today, I was recently at Verizon, and they've got you over a barrel. I walked in there, and they basically said, oh, well, that's the way you feel, go ahead, go do what you gotta do. Because I told them, I said, I can go to, you know, Sprint or whatever, and that was their answer. Oh, well, go ahead, go. They don't care. They're making money left and right, all these kind of companies are, so they're all doing it.
You know, to go along with Trudy say, the only thing we did say is we would sign the contract.
Right, but
we
the
didn't-
one thing
we-
I will
we-
say is you at least negotiate, instead of them coming through and saying, well, you're paying this, now we're gonna increase it, at least you got a reduction out of it.
Well, a lot
Feel
of it
little
had to
bit
do with Al Pryor sitting there saying, you know, we're not in a contract, let's just go bid this thing out, and they're sitting right there, and they're both going, oh, gosh, let's cut them a good deal. So, you know,
The last contract we signed, then we had to buy the phones plus get the monthly charge.
Correct.
So we're saving a lot of money.
not having
You
to
know,
buy
those phones might be $300 or $400 a piece times
They are.
44.
Yeah, Trudy said
Right now,
400.
they are 400.
Yeah.
If I have to replace one of these old phones, they cost me 400, and there's no guarantee it's gonna work.
So we're really saving a lot of money this go around with the same vendor.
400 for sure, because my phone's broke.
Well, yours is from
Well, go on,
use,
speaker.
overuse. like
You're not
Overuse,
supposed
yeah.
to throw it, Paul.
You're a secretary.
Okay, so, what's the pleasure of the board? Ms. Tinneberry?
What's this says the proposal is valid 30 days from this date. So how do you figure that they're gonna take off? It says 30 days, right here.
That was based on you.
On the front,
telling them you'd sign.
turn to the front page, read the front page.
Yeah, I'm reading. I think it's valid on us signing it. We haven't signed the contract.
I mean, why do you have to do it tonight? That's my question. I'm still asking that question because, I mean, first of all, it only has your name. Our board requires supervisor and clerk sign all contracts. So you, not one person, you or Trudy, can enter into an agreement for the board. It has to be two people. I mean, and what on the world is 8100 Jackman Road, Sut Hall? What's that? Is it supposed to be Township Hall and they can't spell? Just wondering. Just wondering.
I don't know, Nancy.
I mean, they don't sound very
I mean-
professional to me.
Well, we've
Sounds
had them
like it's
since
Chysler's trying to
2011, and, you know, nobody's ever questioned it, and we've been, you know,
That's-
replacing our phones.
That's
and-
an issue too. It's been since 2011, and they're just coming forward now?
Well, the
Where
contract
were they?
automatically renewed.
No, you said it
That's the
hasn't
problem with the
renewed since-
contracts when they automatically renew.
Well, this says it only automatically renews for 1 year.
2016 it ended.
Where'd you get the 5 years?
I'm saying 2016 it ended.
I know, but earlier in your conversation, you said at the end of 5 years.
At the end of 5 years, when the replacement, I think that's when the replacement goes away, when they replace the phones for free. You can
So-
own the phone system or something like that, or whatever.
So we're agreeing here to 5 years or 1 year? This says
Contract
12
says 1 year.
additional months. It doesn't say 5 years. See, there's nothing in there. I'm telling you, telling you, getting hooked by some circus guy. Okay, I can go, I got my vote, never mind.
Maybe we ought to go to soup cans and a string. That'd be a little cheaper.
I mean, you're getting the phone system for free. You paid 15 grand for it back in 2011. We're saving $2 a month per line on 44 lines. It's the same company we've had since 2011.
And you don't like it. You don't
Well,
like
I don't like the phone tree. That's not their problem. Our phone tree's junk, if you ask me.
Mr. Peroni? Ms. Tinbury brings up a good point about, we don't know what they're going to do in 1 year since this is 1 year. And their proposal does not clearly state what they're going to do after the first year. I'm going to make a motion, since it does say 30 days from April 15, that this be moved to the first meeting in May for a little bit more clarification.
Okay, so we're just clarification, are we not gonna put this out for bid then, for a full new phone system? You just want clarification on the contract language?
Yeah, I mean, if you've got to get a brand-new phone system, buy all new phones, I can tell you right now, you're not going to get it in this range. So we've got a cost reduction, brand-new equipment, and so I think a clarification and giving everybody more time to review this, since this was just put at our desk this evening.
Yep. Mr. Wood, to piggyback on that, when you look at the one page of the contract, we're only seeing Exhibit A. So we're not even seeing the full contract. So it would be difficult to agree on anything in that we're not even looking at a complete contract. I think if it purports to be what it is, it's fantastic. We should do it.
And if it's valid for 30 days, why not?
Yeah, I think,
And then let me add one more thing before I get a second, if we get one, that whatever they bring forward, it must have the capability for both two township signatures, not just the one.
did you make a motion, Rick?
Yes. I
I'll
did.
support.
Just know that we might not have $17.50 per phone line per month.
Well,
So I don't care, I'm just
right-
telling you.
It's right here in writing.
All right, we'll see. Okay, we have a motion and a support.
And this
Did
is
you
for,
support?
Yes, sir, I
he
did.
did. Clarification on the contract, bring it back to the first meeting in May, and make sure it has the two signatures.
And the complete contract.
Right,
And a complete contract.
right.
Okay,
Okay.
could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye. The motion passed 7-0. Okay. Item 9, comments from the public. Comments limited to 5 minutes for each individual. Come on up.
Going back to where I left off, the township has the right to enforce any part of the 862-page code that they choose to. Without reading the whole 862 pages, one of the requirements in the code is if there is a basement that has a large enough space in it that it could be, at any time in the future, used for a playroom, recreation room, family room, home theater, or any type of habitable space, it must have an emergency egress directly to the outside. I'm a licensed contractor, and I've sold approximately 50 building contracts in Monroe County. Bedford Township, to my knowledge, is the only township in the county that does not enforce egress from a basement. So you have the right to enforce or not enforce any part of the code that you choose to. Forcing business owners to put a lockbox on their building is going to allow criminals to enter those buildings. Anyone with metalworking technology, a locksmith, or a tool and die shop can make a key for those boxes, and criminals will get access. The technology for keys and locks is 6,000 years old, and it was developed independently by the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, and the Romans, totally independent of each other. And you're going to enforce a code on businesses that's going to allow criminals to gain access to their buildings by getting a key. I've also talked to another real estate broker who's went on the internet and has found a set of keys for the 5 knock boxes that are currently available in the United States. The people in this room should realize if we're forced to put those lock boxes on our building, your social security
Mike,
numbers,
can you address the board, please? I'm sorry.
your social security numbers, medical records, wills, trusts, and other things that are stored in law offices, real estate offices, dentist offices, doctor's offices will be made available to criminals, as well as drugs. You may not know it, but Cary Drugs has been broken into, Food Town has been broken into, the Sunoco gas station has been broken into, and that was physical entrance. With this, with these keys, a criminal can gain a key, go in there at 2 o'clock in the morning, unbeknownst to the business owner, and obtain controlled substances and personal and private records that are in those buildings. I don't have any problem with a business owner that decides he wants to give the government access to their building. That's up to them. But there's no reason in the world that the government needs to go into a vacant attorney's office, doctor's office, or real estate office in the middle of the night because they suspect there might be a fire. If my building's on fire, you're not going to go in there anyway. You're going to stand out in the street and spray water on it just like you did to the church on Lewis Avenue, just like you did to the ARCA building, and just like you did to the gun club clubhouse. Firemen do not go into burning buildings. They stand outside and spray water on them until they get the fire under control. There's no reason that they need to have access to private buildings. And if you allow the township to enforce this on businesses, what's the next step? Enforce it on private homes? People sleep in homes 24 hours a day. I can see the requirement to have it in a nursing home or an elderly care or assisted living where there are people sleeping in there at night. But there's no reason to enter a private business at night when it's unoccupied. This technology, if you've ever been on a cruise ship or a hotel, is an electronic lockbox. It can be programmed to work by cards or codes. It can be programmed so the codes change daily. It can be programmed so the cards last for 1 day, 1 week, 1 year, whatever time period you want. And it's a controllable entrance that a criminal can't get a key to and get into.
Thank you for your comments, appreciate it. Any more comments from the public?
I'm Jewel Patton. My address is 1612 Hunt Clef Court, Temperance, Michigan. I've made some notes here that I just want to read from so I don't lose my train of thought. I have been a resident of Bedford for 34 years. I sit on several committees in the township.
Jewel, just speak into the mic or pull it down so we can hear you.
That
Got
good?
it.
Now you made me lose my train of thought. I sat on several committees in the township as well as an officer of several boards. 2 of these committees meet at Township Hall. Therefore, I'm in Township Hall usually twice a week. In March, I came before this board with a concern about a private citizen being behind the counter of the clerk's office, appearing to be looking at files. I mentioned no names, only suggesting that no private citizen be allowed behind the counter. On April 1st, I was in a meeting with one of those committees in the supervisor's office. The meeting was held there to leave the conference room open so that Miss Gail King could use it to get her weekly FOIAs. Gail appeared at the door taking pictures of the committee members. On April 2nd, Ms. King came before this board and stated that she was at a meeting at Township Hall. And to her surprise, these are her words, Jewel Patton, the ringleader of Blizzard Fest, was in the supervisor's office with Blizzard Fest, and she was concerned we would be going through files. I want to address that statement. First of all, I'm not a ringleader of anything. I sit on the Blizzard Fest committee, and secondly, Blizzard Fest was not only not in the supervisor's office, they were not even in Township Hall on that day. Ms. King saw something, jumped to a conclusion, and then started spreading rumors with no regard for facts. Shame on you, Gail, for spreading this about a committee that spends 12 months a year planning a free event for the citizens of Bedford. You owe both myself as well as Blizzard Fest an apology for spreading those rumors. I also would like to say that to my knowledge, there are no files or money in the supervisor's office, unlike in both the clerk and the treasurer's office. Another committee on which I sit has been planning an event, a portion of the proceeds of that event going to the veterans. I personally always give to the Veterans Center as well as help the center in any way I can. Blizzard Fest also, our committee made a donation to the veterans last year. My question to Ms. King would be, did you give the proceeds from the TAC Car Show fundraiser in which you were involved for the Veterans Monument to the veterans? I have heard the amount raised from those car shows is somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000. If the answer to that question is no, shame on you. On Tuesday, April 9th, I received a call from the sheriff's office. Ms. Keene went to the office and told them I was following her. I had taken 2 pictures of her, and she felt threatened. First of all, I took no pictures of Ms. Keene ever. I have never followed that lady. I was in Township Hall with a committee for a meeting on April 8th. I'm a busy person, have no time or desire to follow anyone. Let me make this perfectly clear. I have never threatened anyone. To state such untrue facts to a police officer constitutes filing a false police report, in my opinion. Shame on you, Gail, for taking the time of that officer to file a report full of nothing but lies. Once again, you jump to conclusions, spread rumors with no regard for the fact. This is how Gail spends her time. This is FOIA's for a 12-month period. This is how I spend my time. This is just 2 of the committees that I sit on that does fundraisers and puts on free events. Shame on you, Gail, for wasting the time of the employees of Township Hall, paid for by the taxpayers, in this quest to destroy people. I have no idea what has made you such a bitter, hate-filled person, but I pray God will touch your heart and let you start to spend your time doing good for your community rather than trying to destroy people. I realize this board's hands are tied as far as responding to this lady because you're public officials. I, however, am a private citizen and will not be bullied by an individual that I don't even know. Blizzard Fest.
Your time is up, Gail. Or, I'm sorry, Jewel. You said her name so many times, I guess I couldn't even think about it.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Okay, thank you for your comment. Any more comments from the public?
Yes, yes, sir.
I can't believe I did that.
Mark Ellsworth, 1421 Winding Way. I am also the owner of DeCapo Coffee, which is why I'm here tonight. Sending around pictures because a couple weeks ago we got something from the ordinance officer, and a lot of businesses all got the same thing about trying to be recognized, or about the sign ordinance. I know when this board first set, one of the things they talked about was working on the sign ordinance. As you can see that by the first picture, when you come upon my business coming north, and I get a lot of people coming north, you can't even see my business, and a lot of board members, or some of the board members, used to make fun of my monument sign, but when people would call our business, we could tell them to look for the monument sign and then turn in that parking lot, because a lot of people, I just had a guy from Pennsylvania over at the subway asking him how to get to my coffee shop. They said, well, it's across the street. So I guess my point is, Jason got a phone call about our monument sign, or not our monument sign, but my wooden sign. And, you know, I use it as a point of reference. For us to put a sign in there, and if you kind of scroll through the pictures and look at the corner, for us to put a 4-foot monument sign on the corner, we'd be impeding traffic or blocking traffic
to put 2 signs out there, one for the liquor cabinet and one for us, and we'd have to do that twice on each side of the road just to get electricity there. Jason said he's gotten quotes up for about $40,000 just to put 2 signs on our property. So we're in a kind of a stuck situation, and for me just to put that little wooden sign out there, it would cost me $832 if I paid my $35 every 15 days just to get people into my business. That's not very business friendly. So that's all I wanted everybody to think about, is to start looking at these signs, and when the ordinance officers start knocking on our doors and trying to find us as business owners, I have 24 mouths to feed. I got 3 individuals that are handicapped that work for us. So we give back to the community in a lot of ways. So when you look at each individual businesses, and this is just me looking out my car windshield, and I shouldn't tell you my wife did it, but I did it while I was driving. It's hard to see. That building's on a little bit of an angle leaning back, and it's hard to see. So we've worked very hard at getting people to know where we're at, and we do a great business there. We're an asset to the community. I mean, we bring people off the expressway, that get off 75, that come down 23. People from like a guy from Pennsylvania stopped and had a sandwich the other day. So please, when you start sending ordinance officers around to look at signs and stuff like that, be kind to some of us that are trying to make a living and trying to make this place go. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
Hi, Jody Russ, 1273 Winding Way. First, I need to say that I'm here speaking by myself as a citizen of this community, and I don't want anybody to think that the thoughts or opinions that I express are anybody's other than my own. And I'm going to read this, which isn't my normal thing, because I just wanted to make sure you guys got all the points that I had to say. As you know, the community passed a millage in November in support of the library building. Following that success, the Library Advisory Board came up with a timeline for completing the projects promised to the public, which we shared with both the Township Board and the general public. The Library Advisory Board at their February and March meetings voted to recommend acceptance of quotes to the Township Board for removal of trees and painting the interior of the building. These items were sent to the Township Clerk's office with the expectation that they would go to the Township Board for their approval at tonight's meeting. On Wednesday, April 10th, the day that that agenda needed to be finalized for tonight's meeting, the president of the Library Advisory Board was contacted and told that she needed to request to have those recommendations pulled from the agenda because we didn't follow the proper procedures for obtaining quotes. I was also included in that email. These quotes were obtained by contacting local businesses using the BBA, the Better Business Bureau, and local input from residents regarding quality of service for 3 quotes for 2 different projects. We are not affiliated with, friends with, related to any of the people who work with any of those businesses. I personally have never had any of them provide any service for myself or the library in the past. The Library Advisory Board has been the entity that has secured quotes and made recommendations to the Township Board for a very long time. Both Nancy Tinnevery and Trudy Hirschberger were our board liaisons in the past. We followed this procedure when they were at those board liaisons, and there was never a suggestion that this behavior was inappropriate. We received the quotes at the library, presented them to the Library Advisory Board for their recommendation, and then presented them to the Township Clerk's office. The township policy says any work costing between $500 and $19,999 requires 3 quotes. Anything over $20,000 requires a sealed bid process through the clerk's office. We followed that policy. While we did note that one of the quotes for painting the building did exceed the $20,000 amount that would require the sealed bid process, that was not the quote that the Library Advisory Board recommended. It was also the last quote that was received, and since the first 2 received did not exceed the $20,000 threshold, we had no way of knowing that any of the quotes would have come in that high. At the township budget meeting just 2 months ago, myself and the Library Advisory Board representatives were asked to get bids for cleaning services for the library. Why now is that not okay that we did that for tree removal and painting? The voters in our community passed a millage to get work done at the library. Both those voters and the Township Board has entrusted the Library Advisory Board to do their due diligence in researching how to best use that money and to make those recommendations to the Township Board. I'm a rule follower. If the Township Board wants to change the policy and the process for all township expenses, regardless of board, committee, department, I will be happy to comply. We are nearly at the end of a fiscal year, and it does not seem reasonable to change this without notice when we are trying to get things we budgeted for accomplished before fiscal year end. In addition, doesn't it seem like it would make more sense to have removed those trees before they leafed out for this season, when it wouldn't be as much mess for either the contractor, the HVAC equipment, the building and grounds, or the library patrons? I appreciate the time that all of you put into this job and the commitment that you have to this community. I do the same for the library. I feel very passionate about it, and I hope that you all know that I would never do anything that wasn't something that I felt was right in my heart. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
I never know whether somebody else is going to move here, so if I don't move quickly, you're liable to say it's the end of it. So I want to make a comment on what the gentleman said about the lock boxes. Logan Tisdale, 1308 Brandywine Street. I was at a business, a restaurant actually, where they had one of those lock boxes. And I think that that's kind of a situation where maybe at a restaurant it's not a big deal because if they break into a restaurant, they're not going to get any personal information about me. But in an attorney's office or an accountant's office or a doctor's office like that, where they may keep things on file that are hard copies, they're going to have some information on there which is obviously pretty important to me that I want to keep secure. So I think the township ought to be thinking about, if these businesses want to put a lockbox out there, why can't you just make it an option rather than something that's mandatory? I certainly don't want to put a lockbox on my house. And I'm there all the time and stuff, but I think that they make that an option for people. Obviously, people are concerned about that, and I guess if I had an office where I had personal information about people, I would be concerned about it too. So that's just my take on it. A lockbox didn't help the Cathedral in Notre Dame, did it? I happened to be there one time in 1966. That's a gorgeous building. But they'll be able to repair that. Nobody lost any lives that I know of in that. So I think the lockbox thing is something that the township ought to consider very well and let people take an option on that. And if they opt out of doing that, it shouldn't be a big deal. If the fire department needs to get in there for a reason, obviously you're going to have to break down the door. And if the homeowner or the owner of the business says that's okay, then that shouldn't be a problem. That's my only concern. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments?
Hi, Melissa Fitzgerald, 9195 Lewis Avenue. I'm just going to do kind of a broad spectrum here, so I wanted to make sure I wrote it down. This board was elected to work for the people and businesses of this community, not to do what makes them personally happy or to help a friend or to broker backdoor deals, to somehow get what they want or think is right. This board is the definition of backdoor politics. And honestly, that just makes me sad. I know that nothing that I say here or honestly at any meeting by any person will change anything you guys have going on, because you have all made it very clear time after time you get what you want and you make it happen however you feel the need to do so, which is also why so many, including myself, do not take the time out of our crazy busy lives to spend the time sitting and listening and commenting at township meetings. It feels like a complete waste of time. Wish I wasn't here. So I am saying what I need to today because I feel like I need to do a little something, even though we all know it really doesn't matter. I sit here month after month and I listen to these meetings and I go through so many emotions. I get angry, I get sad, I get frustrated. There's one person in particular that literally makes me want to claw my eyes out when I hear them. But I am sad that this community is where I was born and raised. I loved it so much. I wanted to keep my family here and raise them here. I loved growing up here. I wanted my kids to have the same sense of community. That has all seemed to change. This town is currently amazing at coming together during tragedy, but past that, everyone seems to just eat and tear each other apart. There is no agree to disagree. There's just name calling and rude comments. It's more about what works for one person and not all. It's about making a small part of the town happy as opposed to the majority. I think our schools are amazing and happy that my girls got that education here. But with one currently graduated and attending MSU and the other a sophomore at Bedford, I am looking forward to the day I no longer have to stay inside township lines if we so choose not to. And that really hurts me to know that it has come to this. I'm also part owner of John's Trailer Sales. I own the company with my dad and my brother. Our business was in Toledo for 35 years. And 2 years ago, found an opportunity to purchase and restore a building sitting vacant for almost 12 years on a main street in this town. And bringing our business to the community we live and grew up in was a very proud and happy moment for all of us. We have worked extremely hard at making the 10-acre property look presentable again. We have spent a lot of money to do so. We have also tried our best to keep whatever work we needed done by local businesses. We own everything on our property, including our property. We do no floor plans. I own every ounce of equipment and trailer sitting on the premises. We find it beyond ridiculous to be forced to do things to our property that we are not okay with, yet the township and other commissions don't do their job. Just like last week, we spent over $50,000 on new blacktop for a large portion of our parking lot that was completely eroded. In return to the upkeep and improvements to our business property, our taxes continue to rise every year now. We are a $10 million a year grossing company in this town. I have no idea what percentage of that gets, but in a couple of years, you got to get something out of it, I'm sure. And in return for that, sorry, I just lost my place. We can't even get someone to handle the backed up ditch line that floods every spring and every hard rain because everyone passes the puck. It's so bad, it's eroding Lewis Avenue, the road itself. This person says it's not them, it's this entity. Then this one says, no, it's this one. And it just continues until you don't have the time and effort to handle it anymore and it's forgotten. And then to turn around and tell us we have to put a box on our building with the key in it, pay for it, pay for installation of it is absolutely absurd. We live within 3 miles of our business, every single one of us. Our phones transfer to a cell phone after hours. You can always get in contact with us. At any given moment, someone can be at our property in less than 5 minutes. The concept of a Knox box is irrational, and at the very least, it should be a choice. We have only been in Temperance as a company for 2 years. We have been inspected prior to opening, after opening, and the following year. Not once was this ever brought to our attention, yet has supposedly been in the code for almost 20 years. Never enforced, so why enforce it now? I will tell you plain and simple, we got a new fire marshal. It's as simple as that, of which wants full-time hours, so in order to keep full-time, since our old fire marshal was a part-time position, they have to justify his workload for full-time status. In order to do so, they're drumming up work. That's it. This town has ran just fine for years and years with no Knox box. Also never had the situation of needing a place of business after breaking in to attend
Melissa.
another call, then leave them shorthanded at another point. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance. Yes, the infamous Gail Kane. I am happy for the attempt to keep the historic buildings. That's important. I agree with Rick. Full-time should be paid by the requirements dictated to them by the state statute, not by title. And the trustees deserve to be paid and increased along with the other elected officials. If you don't want it, I believe you can give it back. In regards to the road issue, it was stated they don't need to have a public meeting, that 2 minutes is sufficient. Well, the presentation wasn't just 2 minutes. I'm not opposed to it, but you all need to understand the history behind this. This is an attempt by this group. I don't know who organized it, who's the members, who listed somebody as the director. I went through this paper, found it by accident because I expected the roundabout to be on title this morning when I went to check for the agenda. And no, not everybody watches these meetings. Nobody checks the agendas. So to say that we have an opportunity is in error. This is definitely an attempt for them to take over the Temperance Action Committee's Downtown Temperance Days. They did this last year. This year they want their own date. There's always been work with us. Well, that resolution and that day was taken by us many, many, many years ago. Why don't they work with us? We never had to shut down those roads, and the numbers don't match up. The Blizzard Fest, I checked for the numbers, and that was not a correct number at all. And I have it for more than one person. So we never had our roads shut down. You will find that Evergreen is a dead-end street. Howard is a dead-end street. South Park is a dead-end street. Whitman is a dead-end street. Orchard is a dead-end street, but it has an outlot. And that outlot goes into the Village Pizzeria's parking lot, so it's not always open. The problem is that they wanted to get an okay before they just told us. Why should the residents be the inconvenienced people? Why are the residents the last to be considered, despite the thoughts of some board members that, you know, not everybody checks this. They don't have the opportunity to be here. It's like all these committees that meet at 10 o'clock in the morning. You know, you've closed doors to people if they have to be there at 10 o'clock. You're missing the fact that we could miss mail delivery. I should not have to be inconvenienced. If I want to go to that intersection, if I need to get to the bank, if I have an emergency, why should people have to drive 2 miles around to avoid causing a problem inside those neighborhood streets? They shouldn't be impacted as well. I'm sorry, I'm all for the activity. I don't have a problem with it. The Temperance Action Committee doesn't have a problem with it. And yes, in 2 weeks, we are going to attempt to have Downtown Temperance Days. Now, I'm sorry that this group of people is immature and they can't play well with others, that they feel they have to have their own thing and their own way. And I know what's behind it. And as far as the attack by Miss Jewel Patton, I don't know whose committee it is. And I know she did not take the pictures. So it's easy for her to say she did not. But I saw her emails. I heard her criticism, and the fact that my name had been mentioned at the 3 previous meetings, she didn't have to mention my name. Everybody knew who she was talking about. Now, in the meantime, I come to a meeting and happen across a group of people. I don't know who they are. She says 2 committees. Who's 2 committees? You know, this stuff should not be happening at the township meeting. So not only was I in a meeting and had permission, she accused me of getting into the drawers of the clerk's department. Didn't happen. So I'm in a meeting. In the meantime, I see her come in and she has someone else taking photos of me on April 8th. Her intention was to come in the door and go out the door. How did she know I was there? That's stalking, people. And that's what the police officer told me. So in the meantime, the next day, I come back in and I have Mr. Peroni standing in the doorway of his office taking my picture and into the other room.
Ms. Keene, your time is up. Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
You won't need the timer. On a completely different note, it's spring up there, and with spring, everybody starts talking.
George, I really don't have to tell you to pull the mic up, do I? You tell us every meeting, yeah, you leave the mic down.
Don't let him do that.
Where's your wife when you...
She's back there laughing, you know. Anyway, spring is here. People are concerned about burning. Seems like everybody has questions about the burning ordinances and all that type of thing. Well, thanks to Damon Cecil, we have a video explaining the burning ordinances from top to bottom. And for those people who have YouTube, you can go on there and catch that anytime. But for people who do not have the ability to get to YouTube, this is going to be playing on the government channel, Channel 7, every day of the week for the next 2 weeks. And it's going to be at 7 a.m., 10 a.m., noon, 2 in the afternoon, 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 7 o'clock. That way, we're getting the information out about this burning. He also talks about blight, too, but there always seems to be questions or people getting caught up in stuff. Hopefully, this will help answer the questions, and we're doing our job by doing that. And again, thanks to Damon Cecil for spending the time to make this video. He did a wonderful job. So, that's all I had.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Okay, comments from board members, Ms. Tinberry?
Yes. Sorry. I'm confused about Jody's comments, so is someone down there that is here full-time gonna?
I can explain it.
Okay, no, when it's your turn, but I'm very confused because, well, yeah, okay. I also want to clarify that I voted for the road project. I'm opposed to the engineering, but I know that road needs to be done. So I've had people ask me, how could you vote after you had such a disagreement? I make mention my position, or it's not always my position. It's many times the position of people that email me, call me, text me, whatever. I believe that they should have a voice, and so I am that voice for them many times, but it doesn't mean that that I'm necessarily opposed to what I'm voicing. I am opposed to the whole engineering. I think that needs to be explained because for some reason, I guess my tone or something seems like I'm attacking the person. I'm not attacking any people. I like everybody. I like this telesystem, I really do. I just don't like their product, so anyway, it's not personal. Somehow people get the fact that it's personal. I just feel like I have to confirm that it's not personal. And I could be that person that this woman in the audience is tearing her eyes out when she hears my voice. I'm sorry, can't help it. I believe in not having total unanimous discussion on a township board of 7 people where whether it's, if we're all in agreement and we take 15 minutes to go through our board agenda, shame on us, and poor public that there's not discussion on both sides of an issue. So I apologize if it causes someone to tear their eyes out, but that's just my position. I'm not a go-along to get along person. I would like to have a copy of the engineering contract. If you could give me a copy and put it in my box, I'd appreciate it. And then I think that this board needs to have on the next agenda. I know we took the 7A off tonight, but we need to decide on a fire appeals board before we pass an ordinance that calls for a fire appeals board. This was passed in, what was it, 2012? And it's been 7 years now, and we have had this in the ordinance, but we don't have one. We need to have one before we pass the ordinance. We can't say you have an opportunity to go to the fire appeals board, and then we don't have one. We don't appoint one. And then I wonder too. I got an email from Lamar about the roundabout, and I apologize. I was not present at the last meeting. I was in the hospital. Things are good now, so thanks everybody for your prayers. But that purchase of that building was on there, but it's not on here tonight. So I hope somebody can explain to me during your time why that we don't have that on here. I was looking forward to hearing more about it. And I guess that's all. I'm sorry to hear that the disagreement in Temperance. I mean, this is a small community. It's thought of as a village. It's not an incorporated village, but people always call it a village. Signs say village. So that tells me that it's a small, quaint, get-along community, and it hurts me to hear people talking badly about it. You have every right. This is a public meeting, and you have every right to voice your opinion, and I applaud you for doing that, but it just hurts me. I'm hoping that somebody can come together and help these two factions come to some agreement about this event. So that's all for now. I mean, I may have some comments back when you tell me about something I don't like to hear, but go ahead.
Mr. Steiner?
This is going to sound a little bit like an oxymoron, but I'm not really offended, but I do take offense, that's my oxymoron here, to the fact of being categorized as an entire board of backdoor politicians. So that's an opinion, but I can tell you right now, the years that I've put in for my service in this community, I've never sat in one backdoor conversation ever. So if you want to accuse me of that, you better come talk to me to my face, ask the questions to me, and you will get the answers from me, and you'll see my actions directly. So don't lump me in, because I don't think the entire board here is sitting in backdoor conversations either. I need to look this way too, because I got Nancy on this side. So again, I'm not offended, because I just let it roll off my back, because I know that I've never been in one of those situations, and I never will be. The Knox box issue, I think it's gotten way blown out of proportion, and I'm just going to give you a 30-cent synopsis of what I think. This is my personal opinion. We've got two ways to look at this. We should either enforce the code as it's written, period, or the other option would be have a waiver to opt out. You file within 30 days of being notified by the fire inspector. You go to Township Hall, you fill out your waiver. But the one thing, instead of having an arbitrary board sitting there and making their opinions and calls, the fire chief looks at it and has to look at one thing that is clearly identified by the ordinance. If he finds it's a situation such as a hazardous materials operation, or like Mr. Sprott mentioned, like a care center where you have people, living in elderly all night long, those are different types of situations where I do believe it should be required. But that would be the chief to enforce the code. Other than that, if there's nothing that's that pressing from, again, hazardous materials, explosives, things like that, you sign your waiver and you go on your way. I think the chief may or may not like that idea, but I think that's probably the simplest way. That gives the community the right to opt out if they want to, and they take on all liability at that point. Last but not least, again, welcome to the new firefighters, and we always seem to thank those firefighters that have stepped up to the plate to join our fire department. But I think an even bigger thanks needs to go to their spouses, significant others, and their families, because those people too sacrifice. Granted, the young men and gentlemen that are out there fighting the fires and putting their life on the line, that's a huge sacrifice, but their families are taking on every bit of that same risk that they are, because they expect their significant others and their spouses and family to come home every night and not get into a situation where they won't come home from a fire. So again, thank you to them for letting their family members join the great fire department that we have in this community. And again, I've said it before, I don't think that we are second to anyone, and we can put our people up against full-time fire departments just about any day of the week.
Mr. Clements?
First off, thank you, and welcome to the fire department. I appreciate your service. Emergency services is a calling, and it's a unique calling for sure. I want to apologize to the board for my health tonight and the coughing. I've tried to keep it under control as much as possible, but I know it's been a little bit disruptive. Other than that, I have nothing.
Mr. Montry? I got it right this time on my first try. Montry.
That's good. The only thing I had is, like, as part of the library advisory board, like any kind of like board to library advisory board, like emails like that. That's the first I had heard about that as well, and I would just appreciate being like copied on anything like that. Yesterday was tax day, so I'm sorry. Besides that, nothing.
Mr. Francis? That's his job to say that.
Yeah,
I'm sure he will.
We should all be apologizing.
Why? I didn't take your money.
Mr. Francis? Oh, you go.
If-
I just want to
if
make sure you
one-
heard me.
I don't know whether I ought to say this or not. A
Don't.
visitor to Bedford that might just have turned this thing on and watched it tonight might believe he stepped into a kindergarten room where there's a fight between 2 3-year-olds or 5-year-olds. This is ridiculous. This is a township business meeting, not a personal vendetta meeting. And I think both sides of the issue are equally wrong. And I don't care if they agree with me or not, that's my feeling on it. I just don't think it's the place to do that. We are neighbors. Why can't we act like neighbors? We're allowed to disagree on issues. We don't have to get personal. There were personal attacks going both ways tonight. That's ridiculous. Aren't we better than that? If we're not, we should be.
Ms. Hershberger?
The Communications Media Committee wanted me to give a report on the 9 accomplishments they have made since starting. 1, hiring Bedford Press as a more economic way to print and distribute township newsletter. Encourage residents to use the complaint line to the state of Michigan as a way to complain about Buckeye Cable and other utilities. Explored ways to communicate better to the township residents by possibly offering a public access channel that is not exclusive to the government. Establish communication with Buckeye Broadband to expand access to Bedford Township residents through meetings and classes and become better acquainted with the community. Upgraded taping and recording equipment to broadcast various township meetings, including the purchase of new computer equipment. Establish a YouTube account to expand access to meetings and events to the township community. Hiring George Welling on a as a part-time coordinator for filming events occurring within the township to promote family living within the township. Completion of Where Michigan Begins video, and reviewing the franchise agreement that was scheduled to end 3/22 of 19, even though we weren't able to do anything about it. I just also want to remind the residents that the Township Hall will close this Friday at noon in observance of Good Friday, and just wanted to wish everyone a happy Easter.
I'll start out with the library, because that way you can chime in.
Okay.
The bottom line is with the library, we own the library building,
Exactly.
okay? The library operates it. It's that simple. Okay, bids should not be coming to the library. Bids should be coming to the township. Jody Russ's name should not be on contracts. The contract should be signed by the clerk and the supervisor. I have come across many different things where I'm like, that's not how it's supposed to be done. So I'm trying to kindly change the process, because it's been in place like that for a long time. Jody does a great job within the building, okay? I don't deny that at all. But this township has a proper way when we need work done, because it's the building that's having work done, like trees, okay? We need to put it on our website. We need to put it on Facebook, so the whole community. I didn't see anywhere where there's bids for this stuff that went on. The painting stuff, yes, at certain points, you have to have sealed bids. There was bids over $20,000. That should be coming to the township. They should be sealed. The clerk should be opening them with another person present. How do we know? And no assumptions anywhere, but who's getting these bids at the library? A lady that's checking in books? I mean, I'm just saying we need to make sure things are done right. We own the building. We need to maintain it.
Okay, I get that, but that's why we appointed a library advisory board, and from the comments that I heard, they went to the library advisory board. I agree, Jody is an employee of the library system at the county level. She has no responsibility to us. She has responsibility to the staff, but not the maintenance of the building, although she does a great job trying to take care and keep the building up. But you keep saying we, but we appointed this advisory committee, and we appointed Craig as the liaison to do this work.
But the bids are going to the library. The bids should be coming to the township. The township should be given specs. Hey, this is what we want done. We want the whole building painted, okay?
Okay.
We take specs, put it on our website, we put it all over, so everybody has an equal chance to bid on this. I don't know where they advertised at the library for this $20,000 job.
Okay, that's the advisory board's,
Okay,
you don't
well,
have to.
the advisory board needs to advise us, not Jody.
No, this is true, I agree
That
with that.
Jody's is being advised. We need to be advised,
Okay.
okay? We need to put the stuff out for bid, and we need to take the bids and open up the seals. That way we know we don't have another entity out there taking bids.
Okay, is this across the board?
This is the only place I know where it's happening.
Oh.
I'm just saying there's a lot of,
I opened up the packet and nothing again. Yeah, I like you, chief, I really like you, so let's not take this down to a personal level, but I had in my packet tonight, as well as everyone else, three bids. Were those sealed bids? I didn't see the
they should
advertisement
be.
for that.
They should be coming to the
Were they
township.
sealed bids? That's my question.
They should be.
Oh, what?
Bids should be coming to the township.
Okay, time out. They should be, but they weren't. So we're enforcing this
Well, we're talking about the
for
library.
Well, okay, but I'm saying.
You're asking me why I'm taking, Paul Francis is the liaison on the fire advisory board. You're asking me about the library. Let's focus on the library.
No, I'm focusing on.
'Cause it's the right way for it to be done.
I'm focusing on across the board. If we're going to do it for the library, we're going to do it for the fire department, we're going to do it for everything.
Exactly.
We're gonna
Chief
do it-
bids need to
we're
come
gonna
to the-
do it for
to the township
phone
hall.
system. For the phone system, where's that sealed bid? You just sat down and negotiated something. My point is,
Well,
it's,
guess what? This township has let a contract go for 10 years, and the price has been jacked up and, you know.
I'm a trustee, it's not my, it's not.
I'm just
my-
saying, do you disagree with me that's how it should be run with the library?
No, I don't disagree with you.
Okay, that's all we're talking about. That was her
But
concern.
you're coming down on the library.
I'm not coming down on them. I'm trying to make things run properly.
Okay, I want things run
Okay.
properly too, across the board.
I mean, we've had to clean up a number of things in the last few years.
Okay, thank you. That's what I
Holding
asked
on
for,
to
your
different
input.
entities' money that we had to give back to them that we shouldn't be have done. There's
Okay.
been a number of things.
Okay, well, I'm just
Unfunded
saying.
liabilities for retirees at $180,000 that wasn't voted in by, I could go on of all the goofy things that I saw here when I came here that we're trying to clean up.
I get it.
And the library is one of them. No offense to you, Jody, I think you're awesome. But I'm trying to run things how they should be run. And according to MTA, her name should not be on a contract.
I agree.
According to MTA, the bid should be coming to the township.
Okay, I'm just
Get me all
saying.
fired up, Nancy, get me all
We're-
fired up.
Yeah, oh, I think
just
this
kidding.
offends people, but to me, this is good,
No, it's good. I'm just
good,
saying,
healthy
she brought it to the township instead of
watching-
calling me, that's why we did it.
I think
So-
this is good, healthy, watching the taxpayers' money, but I'm gonna tell you tonight, in front of God and everyone, I'm holding your feet to the fire in this on everything.
Do it.
Everything that comes, we need to have.
Because this is a
sealed
big
bid.
entity, there's a lot that goes on. I'm just,
Sealed bids. I don't want you sitting.
well,
there
it's
making
gotta
up
be over
deals.
$19,999 for it to be a sealed bid. So, if we don't like that, we need to change it. Okay, so I talked to Randy Pierce about the roundabout, and he said Ms. Keene was wrong about what she said to him about, I came to the road commission to ask for a round. That's not what happened.
Okay.
Okay? Trudy and I were here when the safety director was here and asked, hey, do you want us to go for any grants? I said, absolutely. You go for any grants for this township you can possibly go for, and this board will vote on it, whether or not we want to accept it. And that's what happened. Okay, she went after a grant. They got awarded a grant for the roundabout. They didn't even know they were going to get a grant for a roundabout. They just put in for a CMAQ grant.
That wasn't my question. I
Well,
wanted
I
to know
know,
why
I'm
it's
just
not
saying,
on
I'm
the
on
agenda
to, I'm
tonight.
on to a different
Oh, okay.
item.
All right.
So
Okay.
I just wanted to clear that up because Randy was going to be here tonight because he doesn't like when people switch things up on what he said, but I told him I would just explain it, so. I want to say congratulations to the Lions Den on their big move. They opened up, was that yesterday at 10 o'clock? I'm excited for them. I think their new location is going to be great. They do a ton for this township, and they do a ton for different people. You know, they give glasses to people in need. I mean, I could name, you guys can name a lot more because I'm not a Lion, but I'm excited for them. I think they're going to do great in a new location. I wanted to mention briefly, I had a couple of people ask me, well, why did you let the Knox box go on the agenda instead of just pulling it off? Well, when the agenda item was sent to Ms. Hirschberger by Phil, it was put on the agenda. The agenda at that point walked into my office. I look over it. Okay, the Knox box didn't have the third option like I thought it was going to have. So I called Mr. Goldsmith, and I had Trudy on speaker. And they both said, this is the way we felt the board was directing us to go. So I said, hey, let's let it go to the meeting, and at that point, I'll voice my opinion. And then I thought, you know what, I'm gonna pull it off the agenda, and then the board members, if they don't want it on there, you know, they can pull it and go for a third item, or they can keep it and vote on it. So I just wanted to be clear with, how that went down. I just want to say the sidewalk project is complete from the junior high to the library. A lot of people are excited about it. We had a pretty cool ribbon cutting, and it looks really nice. If you get a chance, take a walk over there. But that was done with zero taxpayer dollars from the townships, and we had all donations for that project. So I'm excited about that. Mike, that's why we're fighting for the card over the key, to give the businesses the option. And I feel like, if somebody's gonna come and knock down that Knox box, keep in mind, these Knox boxes can be attached to your alarm system. They could have a card in it, so some of these so-called people that are gonna bust in it, it's one of those issues that are tough. I've, been dealing with it for 6 months, I guess, or longer. I don't even know, Chief, how long it's been, but it's been extremely stressful trying to figure out what the best thing is to do. Oh, you need these?
Pass them on down.
You pass one down? So it has been very stressful, but I feel like at the end of the day, we're hopefully gonna satisfy both sides. It is springtime, and there's motorcyclists out. Please be aware of the motorcyclists and stay as far back from you as you can. Mr. Pryor's daughter's father-in-law just was killed on a motorcycle last weekend, so it happens, so just stay back. And the crazy thing is a turkey flew up and hit him in the chest.
Ooh.
So, yeah. And I want to say I'm super excited that Damon Cecil has been cleared of cancer, and he's going to be coming back to work next week, so we're really excited of that. He was in yesterday, and yeah, very, very good news. And Light It Up Blue is this month. It's continuing going on. We have a lot of businesses doing that with us. All of our buildings are lit up. I know Jim Nyhan's got a lot of exciting things going on this month to raise awareness and to raise funds for the ISD. I think he's looking to raise $15,000 this year for the ISD. He's doing a lot of cool things. As far as the sign ordinance, they have a supervisor. They do their job. I don't tell them what to do. If there's an issue and you don't feel like your sign should be coming down, come see me and we can talk about it, but they just do their job. I don't tell them, hey, go after Mark's sign, because I don't, whatever. But that's not how it works. So they go after the things they need to go after, and, it is what it is. But this board has a sign ordinance, and we have to follow it, so. Because of right-of-ways and different stuff. I think across the street, they're having the same issue too. So, they've had to move their signs. People call and complain about them. When we get a complaint, we have to move forward. So, other than that, the roundabout, why is it not on the agenda? Phil, you want to speak to that a little bit? It's kind of a long story.
Did you sell the property? Did you, that's what I want to know.
Did we
I don't
sell
care
the
about
property?
Last
We're trying to
meeting
buy
that
property.
I missed,
I wasn't here at the meeting either.
okay, but the sale of that property was on the,
At the last meeting, I said it was coming back to this one, and then there was changes that Phil can speak to.
I will say this, a lot of the stuff that was said from Mr. Frederick at the last meeting is off. By far, I will say that, but there's a lot of issues with the deed.
Okay, before you
The
go
deed
forward-
has a lot of issues as far as different names, courts, and so they're working that out, correct?
But hang on, Phil, just a second. I have one more thing I want to say, and then when Phil's done, we're done. But the sidewalk is nice, but the gazebo over there needs a new roof. Have you seen it? It's got, everything's flying off of it. I don't know, do we own that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, it needs a new roof, so put that on your agenda.
Okay, we'll work on that.
3 bids.
Got patched.
3 bids.
Yeah.
See,
The gazebo roof was just patched, and I agree with you, the patching looks worse than what it was. It's getting ready to be repainted, and I think it will be clarified, and that should be happening in the next 2 weeks.
okay, thank you. Sorry, Phil, you Move right along.
Explain why the roundabout is not on. It was on the agenda, but we pulled it.
Well,
We want it to be done right. We're taking our time.
there are title issues that are being dealt with currently. We have a signed agreement, purchase agreement, but there are many contingencies within that agreement that have to be, satisfied. So, to that extent, before it's brought back to the board, the agreement has to be approved by the board. So the seller has signed, the board has to approve the agreement, the board has to approve the terms of the agreement. But everything that was, that there was concerned about expressed at the last meeting is addressed in that agreement. One of the things we absolutely will do, which is expressed in the agreement, is do an environmental survey before we take title to that project. But the reason there's a legitimate reason for it not being on, and that is title work is being gone through, ownership interests are being determined. So, and you have to determine that before you know who the actual seller is and who has authority to sell it.
I think they finally have it settled, though. Yesterday, I saw an email come by, so
Okay.
look forward to be on the next agenda.
Okay, so if that issue is settled, it'll be back before the board to either approve or not approve it. So,
Okay, just curious.
Yeah, and as far as the bids go, I mean, everything we do here, okay, they come here. Every building we deal with, they come here. Everything with the park board, they come here. Now, you bringing up that about the fire department, that, that's a good point. But I just know that I'm doing my best, okay, because I deal directly with the building at the library, and I want to make sure it's done right. Period.
It's not a personal attack.
It's not a personal attack at all. And not from your end to me, I get it.
Yeah.
Because you agree with me.
Yeah.
And not to Jody at all. So, anybody have any further comments? We stand adjourned.